I don't know, guys. I don't know why chat would be disabled. We'll figure it out. Hold. Hold for a bit. We'll figure it out. Should I just stop the stream and come back in? Oh, wait, I think I see it. Go back. Is it because it's made for kids? Wouldn't be a TNF video without technological issues. Hey. There we go. Yo, yo. What's up? Jackson. Fanta black shirt. Yes. Fanta black shirt. I finally have rights. What does that mean? What's up, Alex? Is this the double bicep stream? No, unfortunately. You let me talk. FFMI limit for an Addy? It's impossible to say what the exact limit is. Basically, the higher it goes, the less likely that somebody's natural. So, are you ever going to see a 35 FFMI? No. It's not going to happen. Are you ever going to see a 34 FFMI? No. It's once you start getting down below 30s, that's when you're like, okay, probably not natural if they're approaching 30, but is it doable? Maybe by a select God-given few. But you see a very, very steep drop off once you get to like 24, 25, right? Like I would say like 25 would honestly be not that uncommon if people legitimately lifted for a decade plus and like went serious about it. It would be actually a lot more common than you think. But once you start getting well above there, it's like, okay. The eyebrows start raising. Do you want a lat transplant? Actually, if I had to choose, it would be a waist. It would be a shrinking of the waist, not a lat transplant. What is FFMI? It's fat-free mass index. You know any 28 to 29? I mean, I know of people who have 28 to 29 FFMIs, but it's essentially anybody who's claiming natural who has a 28 to 29 FFMI, I'm never going to go to bat for that person. You know? Doesn't mean that it's not like there's not somebody out there that can do it, but I'm not going to put my stamp and be like, yeah, that person's natural because people lie all the time and I'm more likely to be wrong than right, you know? What if your baseline is already like 24, for example? It's not. Nobody has a baseline FFMI of 24. If you think you do, you're just underestimating your body fat. What would Julian Fitness FFMI be? Well, he's 5'10". If I'm not mistaken, he's around 200. 5'10". I think I saw that he was 205. In which case he's obviously like low-ish teens body fat wise. I think that comes out to an FFMI of approximately 20, somewhere around like 25 to 26. He has pretty small legs relative to his upper body. That's why, like, it's not proportional. So you would look at him and you'd think he'd be a higher FFMI, but it's because his legs aren't big relative to his upper. That's why his FFMI is not quite as high as you'd expect. Show your college soccer highlights. I've shown it on TikTok multiple times. I'm sure if you search it up, you can find it. What's Mundy's FFMI? I don't know. I'd have to do the math, but I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. Did we just see TNF tism the FFMI scale from the top of his head? Well, it's because there's a lot of times that I've checked various numbers around 5'9" range. So like there's like most often people fall somewhere in the 5'6" to 6 foot range. That's the most common. So I would be able to know relative approximately if you're giving me numbers that are around 5'10" and not too far off from my own stats. Jewer's legs are massive relative to upper. Yeah, Jewer's has big legs. Why y'all fixating on FFMI so much? It's everybody has their thing, right? People fixate on body fat percentage, FFMI, max bench press, right? There's just certain things in the fitness community that people fixate on. What is Obi-Wan yapping about? Can you hold much more muscle in your upper body if your lower body is lacking? Are you limited to how much muscle you can grow on a limb or total? I've seen people theorize that before. It's more so God doesn't give with two hands. That's probably the best way to put it. So that's why often what will happen is somebody will show me a physique and they'll be like, this guy can't be natural, right? And it'll just be a guy with like a really standout body part. I'm like, okay, you can have a genetically blessed body part and then look and have natural stats elsewhere. So if you were to just take a look, like let's take who's a classic example. I mean Shizzy's too common. I want another example. But there's a lot of people who have a standout body part, and because they show that body part on social media a lot, what happens is people are like, oh, well, that guy can't be natural. I'm like, if you took away that body part, you wouldn't be hesitating anymore. So if you can take away somebody's best body part, and then you're really not that eager to call them a fake natural anymore, that's a pretty good sign that you don't really understand how genetics works. So I'm not saying that that person has to be natural, but if somebody has a standout body part, everybody knows that 50-year-old who's never touched a weight in his life, who has gigantic calves. And you wouldn't go around saying, oh, well, that guy must be on trend. Like, you would never say that because everybody knows that calves, because everybody's trained their calves to some extent, because we walk around all the time, we go upstairs, we do a ton of things that actually mean that our calves are pretty much out of their newbie gains phase. Everybody knows that some people grow calves a lot better than others, but people don't apply this same level of logic to chest, triceps, biceps, shoulders. They just don't. It's literally just anyone with limb dominant physiques. Yeah, I wouldn't say that. Because you have guys like what's his face? Oh shoot, Alex Eubank, right? Like everybody thought he must be unnatural, but he doesn't have a limb dominant physique. He has pretty small arms, but he had really nice chest and shoulders. So I wouldn't say it's almost always just somebody with a standout body part that the general public really likes. Yeah, by the way, if you spam questions, I'm not gonna like if I see that you're spamming questions, I'm gonna go out of my way not to answer you. Oh, can you be a moderator? Nice.
Is it Hamza?
Yeah. Do you think David Lade is natty? I wouldn't stake my reputation on it, that's for sure. Um, I've known enough people that were kind of around during his come up who were like, yeah, like all the people who were in his friend group and everything were taking like X and blah blah blah, and it's like, and I don't have definitive proof that he is not, but I would not stake my reputation on him being a lifetime natural, to put it bluntly. Do I plan on competing again? Eventually, yeah. So my knee, oh my gosh. Like, I was really stupid. A couple years back, I didn't warm up properly for an exercise and I messed up my left knee. And then what I did was I had a show coming up in the fall of that year. So what I did was I was like, okay, well I can just like do what I need to in order to keep my legs up. And then once I finish show, then I can like take the time off. And that just made it worse and worse all the way into show, to the point where it's like the integrity of my knee by the time my show was complete was just gone. And it has been a super annoying process of coming back. So it's like it's super annoying to look in the mirror and see myself at the same weight with pretty much the same body fat as I was like 2 years ago. And obviously, like the reason for that being that I could not train my legs to a significant extent for a long time. So I believe that once I'm able to fully like really get back into legs, that I will have put on a little bit of size, but I don't want to step on stage at the same overall mass. It would just be very frustrating. Sounds like it's time to hop on. Hey, don't tempt me. Thoughts on Dorian Sriracha new vid? You mean the one where he proved my point substantially and then tried to act like he didn't? Yeah, that was a good one. Do you think external rotation is really that important for Keenan flaps? So I personally like to externally rotate when doing them. I find that if you try to do pure, uh, if you try to do pure adduction, when you're doing a Keenan flap and you internally rotate your arm, it's just like the chest gets so heavily involved. It's very, very easy for the chest to get heavily involved. Where when you externally rotate and take a just ever so slight path backwards, I find that the lat takes a lot more of the brunt. I could be wrong on that, but that's my personal preference. Could it change eventually? Maybe. But personally, I like external rotation at the moment. Would 3 times a week full body split be as good as 6 times a week PPL if volume is equated, or do the extra days in the gym actually matter? Well, if you're doing a 3 times a week full body split and 6 times a week PPL and equating the volume between the two, I that wouldn't make sense to me. Why would you equate the volume between the two when you're in the gym an extra 3 days? You should be able to do more. Your intra-session volume or your intra-session fatigue on that full body day would be crazy. Thoughts on the Alex Leonidas vid? I only saw like a few minutes of it. I can't do I'm not like you guys. I can't sit down and watch an hour-long video. I was actually thinking about doing it on the live so that I could watch the whole video without it feeling like I was wasting time, because then I could double up on content. We could do it. Hmm. Might have to. Might have to. If lifting, do chest tendons? I'm not reading that. Nice try. Only $2 to try and get me to say that? Come on, man. Yeah. I know. Do you think training 6 times a week is too much? It depends on the person. I've never had an issue with 6 times a week training, but I know some people get really beat up and have a hard time recovering from it. So you have to kind of analyze your own situation and then say, is 6 times a week actually productive for me or not? If it's not, then don't do it. Is that what Wesley's legs are actually looking like right now? That's got to be fake. That's fake for sure. He did not put that size onto his legs. Sorry, I just saw a thumbnail of Wesley Vissers where his legs looked way bigger than they used to be. It's definitely not real. I'm not scrolling. We're setting up the Alex Leonidas video. It's probably going to be pretty funny because a lot of times Alex and I agree on more things than you would expect. Because I know there are some people who make their entire platform being nerdy to the extent of calling things garbage that objectively aren't garbage. So I would guess that I would guess that we'll probably agree on a lot of things, and then there will just be like little nuances here and there that we don't. But I could be wrong. I guess we'll find out.
I have to make sure. I'm not sure how that part is gonna work actually.
What's going on?
You want to restart it?
Yeah, let's restart it. Yeah, he's looking pretty good. Leaned out a bit. He looks solid. Oh, they can't see it? Now they can see it? Do they see me too?
I'll show you what it looks like.
Ah, okay. How do I make it more me or more him?
What are you looking for?
Well, like sometimes I'll probably pause the video and just be me talking, so I wasn't planning on leaving me small the entire time.
The buttons aren't working right now. That's the only problem.
Oh, okay. Don't worry about it then.
At all?
Yeah, that's fine. Well, what else would we do?
Well, I'm confused.
Is there another?
Do you want to leave it and still play the video?
No, still play the video.
Oh, okay.
But I also want to be able to. If I do that, does it show up on there?
Show on there?
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
Dang
why I was
it!
gonna keep it over on that side. Why? What's wrong with that?
Because I don't want to have to turn to read their comments all the time. It's peak like this. Wow, Unk is learning tech. Yes. Are you on finasteride? I was on finasteride, but then I had to. Sorry, not had to. I ran out, so I have to restock. We don't have anything important to say, anyways.
All right, now let's see if we can
keep it on screen, Unk. You mean like on this screen? You're gonna test the volume?
Yeah, I want to just see if we start playing. Because I don't know.
Hypertrophy training is cancelled. Guys, I'm really starting to get annoyed with the optimal lifting community. I generally believe they're pushing a lot of bad reductionist takes, and they're turning off the exact lifters who least need to hear that right now.
At the same time.
I've been wanting to talk about this for months. It's been bottling up inside of me, and I can't take it anymore. And it's not just me.
So
some of the biggest names in this industry, who, by the way, are science-based and big on biomechanics, are fed up too. That's when you know it's gone too far. For reference, Jordan Peters, who's extremely well respected, got over 45,000 likes on his recent rant post. Even Jeff Nipper liked it. So now it's my turn to share my perspective on this obsession with hyper-optimization, the hate on free weights, the fear-mongering around fatigue, and the idea that we should chase maximum motor unit recruitment at all costs. You're being gaslit, and it's honestly sad to watch.
I don't know how to fix that, guys. I don't know how to fix it. We're trying. Be patient. Be patient with us. We're old. We're old. We're not like you youngins.
Let's see. Oh, wait, maybe this?
Oh, yeah, that would do it.
Hard. You're afraid of the basics. You train like you're trying to squeeze out the last 1% of your potential when you haven't even built a real foundation yet. and you're being recommended a training style that's literally brand
Can you even hear him now, though?
erasing decades of lifting history over hypotheses that aren't
I did.
fully agreed upon or properly understood and that haven't been confirmed by outcome-based studies, which is going to be
All right, raise him up a little bit.
It's all mechanistic speculation. Meanwhile, what's already been proven to work keeps getting trashed on with out-of-context arguments.
Are we good?
As if hypertrophy is the only training goal.
Okay, guys.
At this point, hypertrophy training.
Let us begin. Wait, now I can't see their stuff.
Okay. All you do is.
What? Why
make
is
me
it
sure
like
go
that?
back. I just like. It's not that hard.
Oh, this is brutal. This is brutal. Okay. Get a phone to read. Oh, that's a good idea.
Oh yeah.
Huh.
It's right there.
I'll do it. That'll do it. All right. I'm going to get a phone to read comments. And then we should be good. All right. Why did it turn sideways? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay, there we go. All right. I think we are good now. I think we are good. Alex Leonidas says, optimal training is dead. Rant. Can you guys hear my dog? I don't know. I don't know what the audio picks up or doesn't pick up.
Should I get him?
But all right. Yeah, they can hear the dog. They can hear him. Sorry, guys. Sorry. But okay. We should be good now. All right. Optimal training is dead. Rant from Alex Leonidas. Let us hop into this. Oh my gosh. Get him to stop. Just bring him up here. Then he'll be quiet. Demonic dog. All right. Let us do this. Optimal training is dead. A rant from Alex Leonidas. Just as a clarifier, before we start this, I like Alex. I think he has been great for the fitness community. I watched a lot of his stuff in my early days. Very, very entertaining guy, great physique. Love a lot of his stuff. Have not watched a lot of his content recently, so I could be missing a little bit more nuance or context there, so don't kill me if I am. But I am just going to take this video on its own merits, and we're going to talk about it. I would guess that we probably agree on a good number of things, because honestly, sometimes the optimal training crowd even annoys me. But let us hear what he has to say.
Training is canceled. Guys, I'm really starting to get annoyed with the optimal lifting community. I generally believe they're pushing a lot of bad reductionist takes, and they're turning off the exact lifters who least need to hear that right now. I've been wanting to talk about this for months. It's been bottling up inside of me, and I can't take it anymore. And it's not just me. Some of the biggest names in this industry, who, by the way, are...
I just got a comment that the vid is too quiet, so let me increase the decibels on the video. All right, we should be good. He's saying that optimal lifting is turning a lot of people off to lifting, and which I could agree. I honestly, actually, I shouldn't say that. I don't agree. If you were turned off to lifting just because there's the optimal training crowd, that's a you issue. Like, I don't get turned off to the idea of dieting because there's people who don't understand dieting, right? Like, I think if that's the excuse that you're using, it's a pretty weak excuse, and that just means that you're mentally not tough. Personal opinion on that one. But let us continue.
Are science-based and big on biomechanics are fed up too. That's when you know it's gone too far. For reference, Jordan Peters, who's extremely well respected, got over 45,000 likes on his recent rant post. Even Jeff Nipper liked it. So now it's my turn to share my perspective on this obsession with hyper optimization.
Just so you know, on that Jordan Peters post, people tried to blast me, and he actually defended me. So clearly there is some nuance left in the world, but let's continue.
The hate on free weights, the fear-mongering around fatigue, and the idea that we should chase maximum motor unit recruitment at all costs. You're being gaslit, and it's honestly sad to watch. You're afraid of training hard. You're afraid of the basics. You train like you're trying to squeeze out the last 1% of your potential when you haven't even built a real foundation yet.
I will never understand this. You're afraid to train hard. You're afraid to. That's just people. That's just people. That has nothing to do with science-based, because it is baked into the science to train hard, to squeeze out, to make your reps. Like, I've never understood this argument. I'm like, people are pansies. I'm sorry, but the average person is a pansy. Don't put it off on science-based training when science-based training is telling you to go to or close to failure on every set. That's not about science-based. That is literally the opposite. That's like saying, oh, I don't like this person because I don't like, or it'd be like me saying Christianity, right? So somebody's talking about Christianity and they're like, oh, I hate the fact that Christians are just such hateful people. That's why I hate Christianity. I'm like, Christ was like the least hateful person to ever exist. Like, what are you talking about? They are doing the opposite of Christianity. In this case, they're doing the opposite of science-based lifting if they're not training hard. So I've never understood that argument. That's like science-based training is hard training. So if you're not training hard, you're not training science-based. So that shouldn't be on the science-based community. That should be on the people applying things. In which case, like I said, majority of the population are pansies. Nothing to do with science-based.
And you're being recommended a training style that's literally brand new. We're erasing decades of lifting history over hypotheses that aren't even fully agreed upon or properly understood and that haven't been
That I agree with. That I do agree with. There are people who are staking their entire reputation and claim on things that are hypotheses. I don't disagree with that. It's a good point. That's why you don't see me being as black and white as a lot of other people on a lot of topics. It's a good point.
Confirmed by outcome-based studies, which is going to be a huge theme of today's video. It's all mechanistic speculation. Meanwhile, what's
Not
already
all.
been proven to work keeps getting trashed on with out-of-context arguments, as if hypertrophy is the only training goal that matters. At this point, it's almost a meme. Traditional training is being rejected like never before. And I've never seen such a soft lifting culture. Guys who don't want to push themselves or follow normal standards that would keep them accountable. It's like they're allergic to the iron. And now, we have a bunch of young lifters parroting the same influencers. And I see these comments every day. The worst part is, most of them don't even listen to the podcast or read the studies. I do, just like I did for my bulking exposed video, but they just swipe social media, copy paste some watered down takeaway, or quote a few lines word for word without actually understanding what they're saying.
That's true. That is 100% true. I have watched as so many people have taken like some little claim from an individual post and have no idea of the backing behind those claims. And then they take it and they put it into a context where it doesn't make sense. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? The whole I'll give you a good example, right? 2 sets being best for growth. I'm like, where did you get that from? That's not a thing. That was never a thing. What would happen is guys who were trying to be a little bit more precise with their programming would take and they would do 2 sets for various exercises in order to fit it into an overall program. And then people were like, oh yeah, 2 sets is best for muscle growth. That makes no sense. It has no context. It has no nuance. There's nothing wrong with doing 3 sets on an individual exercise if that's the only thing you're doing for that muscle group in an individual day. In fact, you'd be better off doing that. But people can't think like that. So what they're doing is they're saying, oh yeah, well, so-and-so said 2 sets is best. So-and-so said 1 set is best. And there's no nuance, no context. So TNF hating as usual. What are you talking about? I literally just agreed with him. What? Ah. All right. Whatever. I can't listen to you guys and him at the same time. Let's do this.
They think they've got it all figured out, relaying the info back to me, not realizing that I follow the same experts. I'm subscribed to the same paid newsletters. I've been doing this for over a decade, don't forget. I go to the source material. That's where you get the best information. So I've done the research too. I just happen to disagree with some of the conclusions. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what intelligent discourse is all about. So most of the arguments I hear, nothing surprising. And the replies, they all look the same. Copy-pasted, regurgitated, and lacking context for broader applications. And when I ask reasonable questions, ones that came from my own critical thinking, they rarely get answered directly. Instead, it's the same broken record replies. Motor unit recruitment this, stability that, leverages at this joint angle. They don't actually understand the concepts. And they don't understand exercise selection outside the hypertrophy bubble. And they definitely don't understand sport specificity or broader training goals. And just to be clear, I've been training longer than some of these people have been alive, but I'm not old. I've stayed natural while being injury-free and had an impressive physique by 17. I'll flash a picture on the screen. And I built that with full body training, barbell basics, dumbbell basics, and calisthenics. So I've got to ask, do these influencers really think I would have gotten better gains had I trained like today's optimal bros? Because from what I've seen, most of these new...
Depends. Depends which person you're training like. But yes. Are you serious? If you had the knowledge that you have today, and you'd applied that when you were younger, you think you wouldn't have a better physique today? Or I'm sorry, I don't want to misrepresent what he's saying. It could, I mean, he is ranting, so sometimes you say things not quite the way you want to. But if you would not be better at a younger age with the knowledge that you currently have today, then there's something missing in your ability to update your training ideas and knowledge over time. I'm not saying it would have been substantial or that you would have been able to be like, oh man, he went from being pretty good to out of this world elite. But I mean, I can say for myself straight up, if I knew what I was doing at an earlier age to a greater degree, I could have achieved what I have now much earlier. And then I would be building upon that. That is how it goes. But let him continue.
Newer guys don't look better than I did. They can't even hit basic strength standards, yet are somehow doing it right. A lot of them are stuck at 135 pounds body weight and still putting up late novice numbers.
I'm a little confused by this because there are multiple people much younger than you that have been training for a lot less time who are I shouldn't say much, who are bigger. Now, you might question whether they're natural or not, but there are bigger people with less overall training who have been training smarter from an earlier standpoint. So I do understand that there are a lot of small guys out there, right? The majority of the population is small. So that just kind of goes without saying. But there are people who are bigger than me who have been training for like 3 or 4 years with smarter methods than I was training for in my first 3 or 4 years of lifting. Don't really see the point, but he might be about to make it.
Even with massive audiences, that's not normal. And let's not forget, most of them refuse to bulk. I've tracked some of these guys for 3 years straight, and they weigh the exact same.
Okay, so he's referring to
with barely
specific
any
people.
strength
That makes more
progress to
sense.
be made. And strength is the ultimate test. And look, I'm not even saying you have to bulk, but come on. You'd expect some progress by now. Progressive overload is hypertrophy training. Yet these guys are absolutely not seeing faster progression, and they're not outgaining my generation. They certainly wouldn't mog me. And I don't have elite genetics, so please don't.
I will disagree with some people. Some people would mog you. They mog me too, right? There are some people who have been training a little bit smarter, and I'm not even saying that they not even saying that they're training completely differently or that they're not doing heavy compounds, stuff like that. That's not what I'm saying at all. But there are people who are mogging both Alex and I who have been training for less time, who are taking ideas from science-based creators over the last few years. And yeah, like I'm not saying they've gone with every single possible trend or little idea here and there, but there are objectively people that mock both of us who have been training for a lot less time. And then, yeah, I mean, you can blame it on genetics, but then what's the point of the conversation anymore? If everything's genetics, then we got a little syndrome situation going on. If everything is genetics, then nothing is genetics. Hi. All right.
Don't give me that excuse. And imagine, we were bamboozled by power building. Sure, there were a few muscular imbalances, like being torso dominant, but we all had big legs from doing squats and deadlifts. That was actually the damn problem. Lower body heavy physiques. And now suddenly these exercises suck for hypertrophy. Nobody struggled to build their chest from bench press and...
They do not suck. Okay? I am very, very tired of hearing the, oh, X exercise sucks for building this. It's like, it doesn't suck, right? Just because something can be better doesn't mean that the other option sucks. Like people who have been squatting and they squat a heavy amount of weight for a good amount of reps with good control are very, very often going to develop very, very good legs. Now, does that mean that that's the absolute best, fastest way to do it? Probably not, right? We have other things that are a little bit more stable, that you can progress a little bit faster in terms of your ability to actually get the target muscle group hit and targeted. But that doesn't mean that suddenly a barbell back squat isn't going to grow any legs, right? That's just dumb. So anybody who goes on that train, I do completely disagree with.
Weighted dips. Nobody had issues building their back from pull-ups, bent over rows, or the heaviest, most axially loaded hip hinges you could think of. Or building boulder shoulders from OHB despite its instability, and big biceps from basic barbell and dumbbell curls. Just to give some context, from late 2015 until the end of 2017, I was known for heavy yoke training. I lived on rack pulls, all kinds of deadlifts, insanely heavy cheetos with atrocious form, power shrugs, you name it. Same with Eric Bugenhagen. We maxed out every week for years and never once complained about fatigue. We just looked at it like, okay, I'm overloading, I'm maximizing the way to stretch, and we got super thick and strong while doing so. Look at my back in 2017. That was built off hip hinges, weighted pull-ups, and bent over rowing variations.
It's not the point you want to make. I mean, I get what he's trying to say. Lift heavy, develop big muscles, but saying my back was so big doing this is, and then later on into your training, you're also trying to say that you got bigger and better and like so much, like feels like a conflict of interest. That's probably not the best way to put it. But yes, you can develop a good back doing a lot of things that are suboptimal. You can develop good biceps doing a lot of things that are suboptimal. But then do you deny that something else could have done it better and quicker? I've never understood that mindset. I think it's because of the fact that what happens is people feel very threatened if they take a look at somebody else saying that something isn't as good and they're like, well, I did it, and they don't want to feel like they wasted their time, and therefore they project that they are not going to be better or significantly better because they don't want it to be better, because then that makes them feel like they wasted time, which I don't agree with either. Right? So just because you didn't do something as perfectly as you could have done it before doesn't mean that you wasted time. You still were recruiting motor units all the way up through, right? As you got better, you were still doing things that were pretty darn good all the way through. Could it have been slightly better? Sure. But I think what happens is because the optimal crowd goes so hard in on topics and are like, well, if you're not doing this, then do you even care about? People take it very personally. And that's something I've been able to separate myself for my entire life, probably the TISM. I just don't care, right? When Yo makes a video absolutely roasting things that I'm doing, I don't care. Like I don't take it personally. I'm like, oh, who cares? Like, it doesn't bother me. But I think it bothers a lot of people who like the bigger, broier stuff because they view it as a personal attack. When me, I'm like, it's hypertrophy. I have so much more important things in my life. This is not the thing that I'm going to take and make something that I get legitimately upset about. Somebody says, oh, you could have done it slightly better. I'm like, okay, cool. Move on. Incorporate it. If it is actually going to help. If it's not, then I objectively take a look at it and say, probably not worth incorporating, or it is worth incorporating. It's that simple. It's never personal. Black Parabellum channel 1000 sub appreciation says slanderous stuff about you. What? That's the comment you made? I'm so confused. We hit 450 viewers? Dang. All right. Let's keep going.
Alongside power shrugs and direct neck work. At that time, I hadn't even done chest supported rows. The only comparable thing was a one-arm dumbbell row, and I horsed those too. So imagine, I've done everything I could to optimize my back training since then, and although it's improved, it's not a night and day difference, and I argue it's a time factor rather than the exercise selection being the most.
I just don't get this. It can be both. It can be both. Like, I understand you do not like the optimal crowd. I understand that. But why on earth would you be like, well, I just argue it's time rather than the exercise? If it's objectively a better exercise, why can't it be both time and exercise selection? I don't understand this. I'm not even, I don't understand this. It can be both. All right.
Important thing. So I had a huge back within my first 5 years of lifting, and chances are you will too. And basic training can do that. So I come from a generation of free weights and a mindset that you're indestructible and can push way more than you think. But now that script's been flipped. The majority of modern lifters are insanely soft. They probably would have had an anxiety attack watching old school Bugenhagen or Blood and Guts and mock video productions. That tells me their lifting soul has been crushed. If that doesn't stir you up, even with the ego lifting, then I don't know what will. I think that's a genuine problem. You should be inspired by that. How could you not? So back then, our followers were never afraid to try hardcore training. They would do it day of, going all in. Now, you have to write a damn essay just to convince someone to try it. Everyone overthinks everything, triple proofing their video, afraid to just do the thing. They need constant confirmation for something that's clearly working right in front of their faces, that they can literally start doing today. Because our way, it's accessible. That leads me on to the reality of relatable training. Guys,
He definitely thinks MJ is better than LeBron. Funny statement. But I actually don't disagree. I like you guys. If you guys have seen me train at all, I don't train like a lot of the optimal lifters, in the sense that I'm pretty darn okay with going to failure on almost everything. Sometimes throwing in partials, like pushing myself mentally a little bit further than the majority. Now, I do think there's been times where I've overdone it, absolutely. But I've also not been a person to get excessively worried about, oh no, if I take the majority of my sets to failure and maybe even some partials, then I'm never going to recover from this. And it hasn't done me wrong, right? I've still been able to progress very well. And I think a lot of people would. But yeah, I mean, it's, I do think there is a bit of a mentality towards you feel like you have to get validation from somebody else to train the way that you want to train. And that can be problematic because then sometimes I've legitimately watched people go into sets. This is the one that I think is probably the biggest. You can legitimately convince yourself to do more reps and more weight by just going in with the right mindset into a set. And I think a lot of people don't do that. I think a lot of people go into their sets and they're like, oh, well, failure is failure. That's how they view it. So what they do is they go into a set, they start moving the weight, and they just go in lackadaisical. They go, oh, all right, let's do this. Oh, okay, well, I failed there, so I guess it's done, right? But you legitimately could have, if you went into it with the right mentality of, man, I'm going to crush this set, I'm going to do it really well, and you could have got 2 or 3 more reps. If you'd just gone into it with the right mindset, you can legitimately push off failure a little bit if you go into the set with the right mindset. And if you've never experienced this, then you probably haven't been in the gym long enough, because everybody at some point in their life will go into the gym and be like, dang, I've been going through the motions. I could have done better, right? And then you will bring out that extra level that will allow you to go a little bit harder, push a little bit harder. But that in and of itself is a science-based thing. So it's like a lot of times people are like, oh, well, the science-based lifters aren't doing this. Like, well, yes, but you are directly going against science in order to not do that. Mental preparation is science-based. Like, we have studies on this. We have studies on motivation. We have studies on your ability to, we have studies on partners working out with other people and like pushing them and being able to do more and get more out of it. We have studies on the actual mental side of things that would support these types of things. But bros often go in there without that knowledge that we actually have science behind this, and they're like, well, I'm just training. That is very, very science-based. So it's a bit of a mixture, right? Lifting like a bro is actually very science-based from the motivational standpoint.
Flexibility is the #1 consideration for exercise selection. And let's be honest, the vast majority of lifters train at basic gyms. Your Anytime Fitness, Planet Fitness of all places, Crunch Fitness, and Gold's Gym. They're not going to high-end private gyms or even a proper strength and conditioning facility. Now, some guys will attempt to counter-argue, well, Alex, you promote specialty barbells and accommodating resistance. Sure, but here's the difference, and it's a pretty big one. You could literally donate a cheap specialty bar to your gym and it would still cost less than a luxury membership. Probably what it would be for a 1-month cost. Or
What are you
can
doing, buddy?
train at home and be good to go. Or
What are you
if you're
doing?
not going to do that, fair enough. Bare minimum, just bring a cheap set of bands to the gym, which anyone can do. You can go on Temu, buy a $20 pair of bands, and that alone opens the door to all kinds of variations. Combine that with different grips, pin heights, pause reps, alternating barbells and dumbbells and some weighted calisthenics, and you
I'm sorry, that's a little bit boring to me.
are pushing. Because going back to my main point, who really has access to a converging Smith machine? What gym is stocked with Arsenal Strength or Prime Fitness equipment? And even if you can find,
This is the one thing that I have always said is better about dumbbells and barbells is your gym will have it no matter what, right? You go into any gym, I shouldn't say any, pretty much any gym, and you're going to have access to barbells and dumbbells. So that is a nice thing. So what I typically tell people is I say, okay, figure out what your gym that you're going to be at for a long time has access to, and then figure out, okay, what does an overall good optimized routine look like for this gym? Then you're good to go. Obviously, if you find yourself training at a bunch of different places, it might be worth investing, learning how to do a particular movement. If you feel like all the gyms that you're going to go to won't have access to things, that's where Smith machines are honestly super helpful. Because if you learn to do something on a Smith machine, pretty well every gym has a Smith machine. So that's why I've not liked the argument when it comes to, oh, well, everybody has dumbbells and barbells when it comes to chest pressing, right? I'm like, well, I mean, everybody has access to a Smith machine too, pretty much when it comes to the majority of gyms. So in that case, I would choose that option over those. You don't have to. You can do what you want. I don't care. But that's my personal take on that.
those rare gyms, are you actually willing to cough up the cash?
Yeah, we're going to have to skip some of this. This is going to be way too long otherwise. Annoying setup for what? I can just read the titles on this. I can just read the titles for these little sections and be like, oh, well, this is why. Annoying setup for what? Slightly higher motor unit recruitment. That's it, right? I do think some people
If you're
will
telling the
at times, because I already know what he's going to say on this topic. I do think at times people will feel like they're not going to get something if they don't have the perfect setup. It's just not true. But if it's very easy for you to set up and you're able to do it repeatedly, then yeah, go for the better setup. So for example, there's a setup that I did today that was if you if you were to show this setup to somebody from the 70s, they'd be like, what am I even looking at, right? It's absolutely ridiculous. But it was a setup where I did tricep extensions, where what I did was I had tricep extensions, I put a seatbelt around in order to keep my arm from moving, and then I have my cuffs with the ring on it, and I have an attachment that I specifically had Echo make for me. We don't even sell it to everybody else, that can cuff into the cuffs itself, and it allows me to do tricep extensions with my cuff rings bilaterally. And like you would look at that setup, right, and you'd be like, "Oh my gosh, like that's ridiculous, like absolutely not necessary." And I agree. It is not necessary. But for me, it's become so easy to set up that it's like, "All right, seatbelt, and my cuffs are always on, right? I don't have to like go out of my way to have them on. All right, strap into the cuff. All right, here, let's go." Right? It's just as, I shouldn't say just as, obviously it takes a little bit more time, but it's still a relatively easy setup for me, right? But if you had to go out of your way for like a 2 to 3 minute setup just to get into it, it's like that's when you start questioning, okay, is this worth the time that I'm putting into it, or am I just doing something unnecessary? So once you do figure out a setup that works really well for you, that overall is going to do the job very effectively, don't feel like you need to change up everything every time just to make it slightly better. Oh, but I could do this, make it slightly better. Once you've figured out what it is that's solid, stick with it. It doesn't need to be overly complex. Good stability, good ability to make sure that you're working the target tissue. Right, I think that's the main thing that people run into, right? When they don't understand exercise selection, is they'll actually be loading a lot of other tissues. That's the main thing behind exercise selection that we are trying to do. We're trying to make sure that it's actually going primarily towards, if not solely towards, that tissue. That's almost the entire goal. I mean, that is the entire goal behind these little bit more optimized exercise selections. But that doesn't mean you won't grow without them, right? Obviously, you can still grow with a multi-joint compound movement that just seems very, very basic. But even then, if you take a look at that compared to what people were doing in the first century, where they were just picking up and throwing around rocks, it's like that would look complicated to them. So there's always been steps and progression towards more scientific patterns of lifting. People just don't understand that barbells in and of themselves are a scientific thing, right? Like I think that's where the disconnect comes. They're like, oh, well, just use barbells and dumbbells. It's like, well, yeah, but you know that the people that came before you would have said, just pick up rocks, just throw hay bales, right? Like they would have said that to you. It's like, and then you make a machine, and then people will be like, oh, well, just use the barbells. And then you get past the machine and you start doing a single joint movement and then people are like, oh, well, just use the machine, right? It just keeps going, just keeps going. So how complicated you want to make it is up to you, but to act like you won't make gains if you don't take and do a very, very complex setup, obviously that's dumb.
Mass is to do back supported isolation lifts primarily with cables and cuffs, even bringing in a seatbelt if you're.
So if you actually watch him perform this movement, he's not stable. That's the part that I actually find funny, is he's talking about this being a stable setup, and it's like you can watch. Like, let's take it back just a couple seconds. Watch his arm path. I want you to watch what happens.
Do it. Why? Because you need cuffs.
Don't know. Are you seeing that? Are you seeing that?
Drag that over to the cable station, and by then
arm is like it's wavering the entire way up. So in this case, I would take a look at this and I would watch that and I'd be like, yeah, like your cable setup isn't really doing anything for you. You'd probably honestly be slightly better just doing dumbbell lateral raises at this point. You're probably going to be a little bit smoother with it. It doesn't look like he's coming from a place of stability. So I would argue that that's completely true. Now, if he was able to do it in a manner where he could remain smooth throughout the movement, obviously it's going to be slightly better. But even for myself, like I'm not a huge fan of cable laterals if I have the option to use a fixed machine. you're gonna be like, oh well, now you're introducing something that not a lot of people have. It's only if you have access to it. Obviously, you can still grow great side delts without it. But I'll just take and I'll go to a machine that's on a fixed path, that's swinging upwards, put it on here, and do this. Pure abduction. So if you have the option to do that and you're trying to hit your side delts as best as possible, I get that there's people who are emotionally attached to exercise. So like, well, it's not fun. It's not fun. I'm like, okay, if it's not fun for you, it's not fun for you. For me, it's still fun. So I'm going to go push that exercise as hard as I possibly can. That just makes sense to me. But I'm also not going to go ahead and say that people who aren't doing that setup are just not good. They just don't care about motor unit recruitment. They just don't care about gains. I think both sides can be true at the same time. All right, let us skip ahead a little bit. Oh man, he talks about this for a long time. Optimal science exposed. That sounds interesting. Let's skip ahead to that.
Criticizing constantly. How about you give them workable tools instead of flipping their entire damn program upside down? Because if you're actually smart, you'll know how. That's what creating special exercises is all about. But one thing I really want to point out is this idea
wow, Jason Bahai sounds like he has a lot to offer.
Superior or optimal. Understand that there
if
are
you want to talk, go ahead.
Trials
give something that we can actually talk about
with all of these novel exercises. Since about 2019, there's been all these fancy exercises that have come out, and their effectiveness has all been based on mechanistic speculation.
Ooh, mechanistic.
And the few studies that do compare exercises, the results are all over the place or don't favor them. Take incline curls versus preacher curls. First it was incline curls that won, then preacher curls, then incline again. And now, according to some recent data, this includes Bayesian curls. They're all about the same. Apparently, all three curls are equally effective. Same with the whole lengthened partials hype. That exploded. Everyone was losing their mind over it for a good year. But then when we tested it on trained lifters, there were no significant differences. Or take the cable out arrays. Everyone was shitting on the dumbbell version, saying you had to use cables one arm at a time to work the lengthened position, and you're missing out. Then the research dropped, and guess what? No differences again. But on paper, it should have been superior. Yet it wasn't. And the greatest example of all, the one that should make every single one of you take a step back, are the multiple well-conducted studies comparing machines to free weights. Every single one of them have shown no significant differences in hypertrophy. And that's absolutely crazy because the machines...
Well done. Studies. No. Every time I've looked into one of these studies, I've found multiple glaring issues. However, I have also said when it comes to free weights versus machines, what you're essentially taking a look at there is time. It's very, very simple. What you're looking at that point is you're looking at, okay, no, machines don't beat in short term free weight exercises. I mean, anybody that thought that they would, like, just destroy them in a noticeable, statistically significant way, I honestly, at that point, if you expected that to happen in an 8-week study, I'm not trying to be mean, but I do question your intelligence a little bit, because you would not expect a slightly more stable movement to outpace a slightly less stable movement in terms of hypertrophy to a noticeable, statistically significant extent in 8 weeks. And if you do expect that, I honestly just don't even... I feel like there's just such a disconnect in understanding how muscle growth works that we're not really able to have a productive conversation. So it's nothing to do with like taking a look and saying, okay, like free weights can grow a lot of muscle. I mean, anybody that says otherwise is an idiot. We know that free weights can grow a lot of muscle. That's not the question. The question is it going to grow the exact same amount of muscle over extended periods of time? And if we have to put it in the overall context of a program, if you only have to use the target musculature in order to make a weight move, that is going to be less overall fatiguing on the overall system, meaning greater output for your other exercises as well. So I'll give you an example. Let's say that you're doing, let's take the theory, and this one I am putting as like theory overall. Let's take the theory that a leg extension grows the quads better than a squat, right? I don't think that that's been substantially proven in any of the literature, but let's take that at face value. Now, if you told a person, all right, you have an option to do 3 sets of leg extensions for your quads before you do the rest of your workout, or you can do 3 barbell squats before the rest of your workout. Now, if you're trying to take a look at what's going to allow you to perform the best throughout the rest of your workout, which exercise are you going to choose? I'll give you a little bit of time to think about that. Which exercise are you going to choose? If you don't choose the leg extensions, you're a moron. Because at that point, you've decided, okay, I'm so emotionally attached to a barbell squat that I'm completely neglecting the overall idea of what's going to be tiring and actually bleed into the rest of my workout. So it's not just the question of machines versus free weights is not just about effectiveness of the individual exercise. It's also about, okay, what's going to allow you to have the highest overall performance throughout the rest of your workout, get the best recovery throughout the rest of the week. If I have to take and stabilize a bunch while doing an exercise, that's obviously going to be overall more taxing, like in a general sense, than it is going to be if I can just target that muscle group and isolate it specifically with a machine. That's more so the conversation. So I think what's happened is people have missed each other, and no fault of I think honestly a lot of it is on a lot of the people who claim to be science-based lifters, because they don't really understand the conversation. So they're like, oh yeah, well, machines just cause way more hypertrophy, blah blah blah, and like it's like, well, you can't say that. There's no real evidence to show that. But if you take and say, all right, it's probably objectively better to do a stabilized exercise versus a non-stabilized exercise for the overall programming, that just makes sense in a general sense. I hope this makes sense. I hope this makes sense. If it doesn't, I mean, go ahead, roast me in the comments. Maybe I misspoke at some point, but if you really expected there to be a significant difference between your growth from 8 weeks of training with free weights versus 8 weeks of training with machines, I really don't think you understand the conversation.
Should have won. They're more stable, they have better resistance profiles, smoother arm paths, no bracing demands, no coordination, everything the optimal crowd claims matters. So why didn't they outperform barbells and dumbbells? If motor unit recruitment...
I just explained it. All right, let's move on. Let's see if we've got some more stuff. But wouldn't you have less strength to squat? Who are you talking to? I was talking about if you just were talking about purely quad exercises and taking the assumption, I didn't say it was true, the assumption that leg extension grows just as much muscle. Okay?
For reps, that's an advanced feat of strength. You already have big shoulders, so do whatever you want from there. Same goes for curls. Yes, preacher curls are 100% superior. I do them too. But if someone weighing 165 or even 181 pounds can barbell curl 135, which is realistic, guess what? That's more than enough to build huge biceps. He could even cyborg it and curl under 100 pounds and still build impressive biceps. So does it even matter after that point?
Yes, it does. So I think what happens often is people are like, well, does it even matter? Well, does it even matter? It doesn't really, the question itself doesn't really matter. And here's the reason. Let's say, I don't know. Let's say you are trying to get from point A to point B with a vehicle that you know takes 10 miles to the gallon. And you have another vehicle that you're trying to get from point A to point B and it takes 9 miles per gallon. Which vehicle are you going to choose to drive if the overall thing you're concerned about is the amount of fuel that you use? Obviously, at that point, the choice becomes obvious. Even if the tank wasn't fully gone, wasn't fully depleted by the time you got to the point. Because you know over time, okay, well, I'm going to have to make this trip multiple times. I'm going to have to do this a bunch of times. And maybe in the long run, it's going to add up and I'm going to run out of fuel. So I take the same approach when it comes to science-based lifting. If I know that something is objectively better, even if I don't know whether it's going to make a substantial difference or a noticeable difference in my overall physique, I'm probably still going to incorporate it unless it's such a detriment to the enjoyment of my workout that I can't even find myself pushing it at all. So if I know that something is objectively a little bit better, I'm going to do it. Because I'm not emotionally attached to exercises. That doesn't mean that I think that it's suddenly going to cause me an additional 2 inches of bicep growth. And so what you have to do is you have to take a look and say, okay, do I believe this to be objectively better? If you do, incorporate it. If you don't believe it to be objectively better, then don't. But that's the way I view it. You don't have to view it the same way. If you're like, okay, well, I only care about the things that are going to make a noticeable difference. I'm not saying this is the case for Alex, because Alex obviously like cares, lives, dies, and breathes for this stuff. But I've often found that the mentality that leads you to say, well, I don't know if it's going to make a noticeable difference or not, so I won't incorporate it, even if I know that it's objectively better. That's the type of mentality that leads to people being subpar in general, because they apply that same level of thinking to every area, which is horrible, obviously. Because once you start applying it to every area, then you're never going to be as good as you could possibly be in a bunch of different things. So that's my general take on that. But I'm not saying like, oh yeah, if you use the right exercise, then you're automatically going to gain an additional inch on X body part. I think that's dumb.
You already got the gains. You only need more stability when it actually becomes a limiting factor. And for most of you, that's years down the road. It is not relevant.
Yeah, but we don't know if it's a 10 versus 9 or a 10 versus 9.9. That's exactly my point. That is like you're actually deepening my point. What I'm saying is if you think like that, you're always going to downplay how much difference it can make. That's always the case. If you're the person who's constantly looking for well, I don't think it makes that much difference, therefore, well, I don't think it makes that, you're the person who's you're actually encapsulating my viewpoint perfectly, which is the person who has that mentality will always be looking to minimize the differences that it could make. Now, I'm not saying that you have to go ahead and say, oh, well, this is trash relative to this. You don't have to do that. But if I see something that is objectively better in training, I'm probably not going to be like, oh, well, people will look at me funny if I do that. I don't really care. I think that's what happens a lot of the time. Is a lot of times people are like, well, I don't want to be looked at funny. It's really, a lot of it is actually being self-conscious that keeps people from doing certain things. Now, I'll say there's also the other way where people are like, they're going to the point where they're trying so hard to be different that they actually end up minimizing their ability to grow because they're always changing something, always like, and it's like, and then they miss the actual purpose, which is, all right, good, objective progression over time, which is why I made that video the other day where it was kind of a video similar to this, not quite as ranty about optimal being bad, but more so trying to find a way for people to meet in the middle where I'm like, look, make your training a little bit better, but also don't be looking to change things every single second and actually stay consistent with something and see progress over time. And I think Alex and I are kind of, so if you had to put things on a spectrum, right? You know, we all love the spectrum here. If you have to put things on a spectrum here, you would have bro lifters and let's say the nerdiest of the nerds. Let's put it that way. The broiest of the bros, the nerdiest of the nerds. It's like most people actually fall somewhere in the middle. There's not a ton of people who are going as crazy on the nerd style training as people think. It's just those people are very loud and post a lot of videos. And then there's also not people who are just caring nothing about proper training. And like there's very few people in those actual categories. And there's a lot of people in the middle. And what you have is you have this kind of dividing line here where I might be a person that goes a little bit more over to this side, and you have Alex who goes a little bit more over to this side. But we would still agree on a crazy amount of fundamental topics. And so it's unfortunately become very divisive, the overall landscape, which means that people are looking for more differences than they are similarities. So when I see people say, "Oh, well, you don't agree with anything this person says," I'm like, "Are you serious? You actually think that? We agree on 98% of things." Guess what gets discussed the most? The 2%. It's the 2% that gets brought up over and over and over again, and people want to rehash it time and time again. So that's why people think that people disagree on everything. They don't. They don't disagree on everything. They disagree on some nuances of their training. Now, whether those people think that way is the other story, because I've seen other people that they like being the, "Oh, I don't agree with anything they say." I'm like, really? I'm pretty sure you both think that curls are good for the biceps. I'm pretty sure you both agree on that. I'm pretty sure you both agree that progressive overload is good for muscle growth. Right? Not even good, just necessary. I'm pretty sure you both agree that you should be getting a good level of protein in order to support in order to support your training endeavors, and a good amount of carbs in order. I mean, I guess carbs would be one that's a little bit more contentious, but in general, a lot of people recognize that carbs are a very good energy source in order to fuel workouts. You both agree that quality sleep is a good thing to have, that making sure that a muscle group gets enough time to rest after training before being hit again. So what happens is, once you start fleshing out overall ideas when it comes to weight training, like most people agree so most people who aren't dumb agree on the vast majority of things. It's the small things that end up getting discussed the most. And so that's where people get frustrated, because they're like, "Why are you talking about these things that don't matter?" It's like, it's not necessarily that certain things don't matter. It's that they matter a lot less than other things. And that is 100% true. Uh, I see your hair is herring today. Did you go up in minoxidil? No, it's just when I don't do as much to coif my hair and it gets a little bit longer, it just looks more full. So no, nothing changed in terms of hair protocol. On God, protein is overrated and vaulted. Well, you're an idiot. Overrated by who? You have to ask who you're talking to. I'm sorry, guys. I thought I could do an entire video. I don't think I can. I don't think I can. It just becomes so much of the same thing over and over again. If you want to watch the full thing, go ahead, but I can't do it. I can't do it. It's too circular. Not saying that he didn't have things of value to say, but we're going to end up saying a lot of the same things, where it's like, okay, well, yeah, that I agree with, that I slightly disagree with. It's just like, it gets mind-numbingly tedious. But I would like to have Alex on a pod at some point. I would love to have him on a pod, and I would love to just have the two of us talking back and forth. I find that to be a much more interesting and engaging format. And actually, I'd just love to get a workout in with him. So, Alex, if you come down to Houston, let's make it happen. I don't know where you live. Are you Canadian? I'm Canadian. I feel like a lot of people are Canadian. Anyways, sorry. Yeah, I can't do the rest of the video. I can't. How do I make my picture go big? Would I debate Milo Wolf on what? I never understand when people are like, "Would you debate this person?" I'm like, on what? What's the topic? I honestly don't even like debating. I find debating to be kind of boring, to be completely honest. I prefer having just conversations with people, and yeah, like, we'll disagree on some things, but going into it like this is a debate, I must destroy. I don't like it. Topic is stretch. I mean, there's not really much to say. Stretch, or I should say length, good for some muscle groups, less good for other muscle groups. There's just not much to say. There would be no real conversation. It would just be, "Oh, do you believe that the hamstrings respond well to longer length training?" "Yeah, I do." "Oh, you do too?" "Cool." Right? Like, it's what are we doing? What are we doing at this point? All right. Hey, Tori, can I get you to help me take Alex's thing off? Come here. Did you respond to Dr. Mike video? There wasn't really anything to say. It was just 7 minutes of him explaining why he thought the exercise was decent, went against a few of the points in the original video, and then it was it just honestly, I just walked away from it saying you needed 7 minutes to justify why this exercise could be okay when you could have just said it's not that good. But he was very respectful about it, so kudos to him on that. Having a dog optimal, very optimal. Oh yeah, I forgot you guys are here too. Did it work?
Yeah.
It says it shows me still there.
No, it's not good. Look at your phone. Look at your phone.
Oh. All right, we're good. I mean, he did say it's wacky. Well, yeah, because you can't really say it's not. It's also, but it's like here. So here's my thing, right? So you're doing kind of a subpar exercise in general, and you're like, oh, well, this is a time saver. So initially, what Dr. Mike said was, this is an exercise to hit the chest, biceps, shoulders, and triceps. So chest, biceps, shoulders, and triceps. That's what he initially said. At which point I obviously called out the fact that no, you can't hit all those muscle groups effectively in a set. It doesn't happen. And then so he immediately backed down on that, right? He immediately backed down on that and then said, oh, well, no, it's obviously not going to be for the delts and triceps, good for the delts and triceps. It's like but it could be for the chest and biceps. So automatically you've basically undercut your argument at the knees, because it was like that was the whole point, was trying to get a bunch of muscle groups in the. Now you're talking about it only being two. It's like, okay, so well, now you're talking about it only being two. That's a different conversation, at which point I wouldn't have been nearly as hard on it. And then now we can talk about the fact that, okay, well, you're literally using the eccentric for the chest and then the concentric for the biceps. You're doing them at the same time, which means that you're going to be cardiovascularly limited and overall systems limited on what you can do for each exercise. So why not, hear me out, just do chest exercise, bicep exercise, chest exercise, bicep exercise, and alternate them back and forth. It's going to be better. You're going to, at the very least, be able to put a little bit more into those sets. So do the chest exercise, do the bicep exercise. Sure, it might not sound as cool as doing them in the same exercise, but you weren't doing them in the same exercise anyways. You were just taking a break between each rep. It's like, okay, the chest is doing a rep. Okay, the biceps is doing a rep. The chest is doing a rep. Okay, why not just turn it into a superset? If the time is what you're worried about, chest, biceps, it's not going to take any more time to do that than it is for you to take and alternate the reps between them. Exactly. So like if you undercut your argument, which initially was that the triceps and the shoulders get involved, well, now you've just turned it into a 2 muscle group exercise. So just do them as a superset. Still a bad exercise. Regarding the exertism curls, if I do alongside another bicep curl, would it be better the preacher or the Bayesian? If you're doing the exertism curls, then you wouldn't want to do a Bayesian, because those would have the arms in a similar place and overall be more similar in nature than something like a preacher curl. So yeah, the exertism curls would be in place of the Bayesian curls. When are you posting a new long form vid? I'm posting one right now. Didn't you see this? Well, what are we doing right now? Bro, why are you so needy? Is doing weight up pull-ups in more of a curved motion, not straight up and down, significantly less optimal? Yes. Yes. The reason that when you're doing a pull-up, you go out and then back in is because of the fact that your body's trying not to use exclusively the lats. That's literally what's happening. So anytime you find yourself cheating an exercise, you have to ask yourself, why is my body cheating this exercise? Because your brain is incredibly efficient. This is what it actually comes down to. Your brain is incredibly efficient, and so it knows automatically what's going. I shouldn't say automatically. It typically has a sense as to how to make something a little bit easier on the body overall. So when you're doing your weighted pull-ups, the reason that you're taking and moving outwards and back in is because your brain has automatically figured out, oh, if I do this, I can move more weight. I can make this task a little bit easier. But what's it doing? It's making the task easier for the body. It's not taking and making it more lat oriented. It's actually taking away from the lats. So yeah, if you find yourself going in an arced motion when it comes to your pull-ups, what your body has said at that point is, it doesn't really care that you're trying to grow your lats. It just cares about executing the movement. And that's why your technique is getting sloppy. Exertism curl better than the Bayesian curl? I mean, I don't see how it couldn't be. You've got same arm position, descending resistance profile for the biceps. Actually, not even the same resistance profile. It'd be a slightly better resistance profile, because a lot of time when people do Bayesians, what happens is the cable actually pulls their arm in line with the body. Sorry, that pulls the cable in line with their upper arm. So personally, I don't see how the exertism curl couldn't be better. Assuming you set it up properly, right? Because I'll always see somebody, they'll be like, well, TNF said this is better, and then I'll watch them do the exercise. I'm like, you're doing it horribly. You're doing it horribly. And they're like, well, you said it was better. I'm like, no, executed properly. So, well, gotta be careful there before I see a bunch of people doing exertism curls in a terrible format and claiming it to be better. Never heard of an exertism curl before. Should have been following me in 2023, man. Is it really enjoyable to make content when you constantly re-explain the same things which aren't that hard to understand? So it all depends. That's going to be heavily dictated on the person. So there are some people in this sphere who have a lot less patience than I do. Not naming names. Mundy. So there are some people that have a lot less patience than I do, and for them, it's much, much more annoying than it is for me. For me, I'm like, I get it. There's people that haven't heard the topics before, don't necessarily understand it as well, and they might need it repeated. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Can you give us an example of an exercise that you swapped in your own programming because it was objectively better? I know this one caused some heat, but like, it's very, very hard for me to argue that an elbow supported fly would not be objectively better than a bench press. Right? So like, I would say that's probably the biggest one that people will point to. I have an option for an elbow supported fly at the gym that I go to, and as long as I internally rotate, it is the exact same motion as you would be getting for the pecs when it comes to a chest press, except all of the tension goes into the pecs and none of it into the triceps. So I'm always hesitant to say objectively better, unless it's like so out of this world better that you would be an idiot to say otherwise. But I do believe that it is objectively better. And I could be wrong. So I guess in that sense, you would probably say subjectively, but I would guess that it probably is. That's definitely not the same motion. Oh gosh. Adrian, you can't rage bait me. You follow me too closely. How could you be wrong? That's the thing. So typically when I come up with ideas and I present ideas to you guys, I've often people will argue and I'll be like, you think I haven't thought of that yet? Like, because I'm pretty hesitant to make statements And so if I'm making a direct statement to you guys that I think something is better than something else, it's usually because of the fact that I've gone through a bunch of different scenarios in my head and tried to figure out how it couldn't be, because I like to prove myself wrong too. I prefer that. I think it's a better way to think. You try to prove yourself wrong than try to prove yourself right. So when I take a look at something, I say, okay, could I make a good argument for something else being better? No. If I can't, I'm probably going to go with the other thing. Bro, you might not have thought about it. Stop overestimating yourself. I didn't say I might not have. I'm saying people will make very, very basic takes. And I'll be like, you think I haven't thought of that yet? I'm not talking about highly nuanced takes. I'm talking about basic takes, which is the majority of your takes. Not you, but people in general. Do you think you should train muscles when they're still sore? I think it kind of depends on the situation and how sore they are. I don't think it's a huge deal to train when you're still slightly sore, as long as you're still able to give a good quality session. So there have been times when I've done an exercise and it's a little bit different than my typical, or I've gone a little bit harder than I meant to, or and for whatever reason I end up sore like 3 or 4 days later, and it's time for me to train that muscle group again. I'll still train it, right? Now, if you find that you're consistently sore as you go to train the muscle group again, and this is happening every single time, I would say at that point, you're probably running into something being off about the way you're doing things that is keeping you sore for that extended period of time. Thoughts on beef protein powder? I don't really have any. Never used it before. Should you arch for upper pecs on incline press? I don't know. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I've seen the arguments for arching versus not arching, and I honestly, sorry. I thought you were just talking about like expanding the ribs in general. Now I understand what you're saying. You're saying like arching well, like you're not talking about like expand. I thought you were talking about more like this, right? Like opening up. But no, if you're referring to an arch, what you want to do is you want to make sure that if you do arch, you're not arching so excessively that you've turned it into a flat press. So let's say you're dealing with a bench that's like at an incline of this, right? If your bench is at an incline of this and you end up arching, you're probably going to be fine, because you're not going to excessively arch to the point where you're no longer in a semi-inclined state. But if your bench is only like this and now you're arching, it's like, okay, that's basically just a flat press. Jonathan Warren, question mark. Jonathan's an interesting one. I don't think I think some of his takes are not well founded. But I'm not going to say that like everything is wrong about what somebody does or says, right? I'm not the type of person to sling mud if I have not looked into everything that that person is for. But I do see some things where I'm just like, okay, well, that's unnecessary. That doesn't really make a difference. You're overthinking it on this sense, underthinking it on this sense. But I'm not going to I saw some of the stuff that he said on certain things that I did, and I was like, you didn't even understand the purpose of the exercise. Could have just asked. But hey, it happens. Can you break a machine using a gym pin? You can break a machine not using a gym pin. So, of course, you can break a machine using a gym pin too. Is every beefy Hollywood actor on gear? Well, depends on how beefy. I'm not going to say everyone is, because I don't know every single actor, but a lot of them. Top 3 anime based on story. AOT, Hunter x Hunter, and If I had to base it just off of story. Good question. If I had to go just off of story, based on the ones I've seen, uh, what would my third one be? Maybe like Vinland? Bros listing anime based on popularity. Shane's the guy that you never like to have a conversation with. Shane's the one who's like, I'm so different. Let me show you this 70s anime that looks like it was drawn by a 2-year-old. Uh, do you think you should train muscles when they're still sore? What? We already answered that. Straight arm lat pull down is better for lower lats. So straight arm lat pull down? You mean like a Keenan flap? Here's the thing that you want to understand. The easiest probably the simplest way to have the lat discussion is just to give you various people who argue it, right? And then you can come to your own conclusions. So what I would say is you have a few different camps. You have camps like Keenan's, Mundy's, Yo. You have these different camps who kind of, I would say for the majority part, agree with things when it comes to the overall lat function. Mundy might not do Keenan flaps, but he still like agrees, I think, with the same concepts. But then you have people like Cass, who Cass would have a fundamentally different overall take on the lats themselves, as far as like the way that scapulohumeral rhythm plays into it. So what I would suggest is, oh yeah, and then you have like scientific snitch as well. So if you want to figure out how you're going to view your lat training, I would take a look at all and then come to your own conclusion. I think far too often what happens is people will just take a look at their favorite creator and just assume they must be correct. But instead, I think what you should do is you should actually take and understand the viewpoints of the whole. And then you can come to your own conclusions on what you think actually happens. Oh, sorry, Scientific Snitch does not agree with Yo, because Scientific Snitch believes that the lats can't be biased, if I'm not mistaken. Or at least that's what she did believe. I don't know if that's changed. Who cares? Shane, you already had a bad anime take. Don't bring it over into hypertrophy. Who has the best potential as a bodybuilder in the science-based community? It depends on how you define potential and how you define science-based. Because there are some people who I would say are science-based lifters who you would not agree, right? You'd be like, well, they don't do this. Well, they don't do this. So at that point, we're really splitting hairs. But I would say somebody who seems to value the science a decent amount is Rough Diesel. I would say he's probably your overall best in the world right now, who seems to care a little bit more about the science than the majority of the guys around him. What's your opinion on biasing the rec fem by reverse hinging, doing a knee raise with added resistance? I mean, you can do it. I just don't necessarily view it as necessary. White hair from explaining too much? I guess so. Would you rather train abs or calves? Calves. Look up straight arm lat pull down. Why? Just, I don't know. No. You do leg extensions unilateral or bilateral? Both. You should watch OPM if you watched Mob Psycho 100. What's OPM? I did watch Mob Psycho 100. Oh, I've only watched 2 seasons of Mob Psycho 100. Netflix didn't have season 3, so I'll have to watch it on Crunchyroll. One Punch Man. Ah, yes, I've heard that's very good. I definitely will watch that. What other arching did you think of during incline? Expanding chest seems like no-brainer, right? Well, no, I mean, that's a big area of contention, is expanding the chest. A lot of people say don't expand the chest. So, no, it's not a given. Exorcism greater than preacher? I don't know. I don't know. At this point, I'm basically like, you guys laugh when I give you variations, and I'm like, all right, like, I don't care. You do what you want to do. And then all of a sudden, you guys see one study that shows statistically insignificant, but slightly better growth for the biceps when the arms are further back. And all of a sudden, you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have made fun of TNF for showing us the exorcism curl. I'm like, all right, you guys are just big sheep. Big sheep. Most fun bodybuilding era to look into, excluding the golden era. Probably, honestly, I think I think the Mass Monster era was fun. Obviously, we're still kind of in the Mass Monster era, but I think Mass Monster era is fun. Starting with Dorian. Where would you place abs on a PPL split? Wherever you want. It doesn't matter. People think far too hard about this. Show us the TISM curls. Yeah, you can go type it in. It's very, very simple. All it is having something to brace your back on, something that you can brace your elbows on where the arms aren't in front of the body, and then it's just a descending resistance profile dumbbell curl. Very simple. How to fight binge eating mentally. So there's a lot of things when it comes to binge eating, but the main thing that you have to do is you have to resolve your hunger. Because a lot of times people are like, oh, well, binge eating isn't about hunger. Well, it's just a lie. It's just a lie. Binge eating is about hunger. Now, it can be triggered more heavily due to certain circumstances, but it absolutely is. It has to do with hunger. You're not going to have somebody. Let's put it this way, right? Your hard gainers, your people who are like, oh, they try to put on weight and they can't. Guess what? They're not doing. They're not binging 8,000, 9,000 calories. Why? Because their hunger signaling is very, very tight. So the best move that you have is to really, really figure out why you're hungry. Then from there, you can deal with all the psychological issues that you're going through, figure that stuff out too. But why are you hungry in the first place? Face away cable curl, my favorite. Thoughts on it? I mean, it's a good exercise. The main issue that I have with it is the lack of elbow support, which is why we have things like the exorcism curl or I think another variation that you can do if you're looking to get things where the biceps are a little bit further back. All you do is you just take and you reverse yourself on a lat pull down, and then you just lean backwards, and then now you got yourself a curl with the elbows a little bit further back. Time to bring back the OG TNF curl. Yeah, the one that everybody got mad at me about. That was a fun time. That was a fun time. Why do we use the term hypertrophy and not hyperplasia? Wouldn't hyperplasia be more accurate? No. You know Adam John? I do not. Kai Levine versus Dev Lifts. Kai. Kai wins that battle. He has a better overall physique. But both obviously have great physiques. Kai's on a different level, honestly. Kai is to the point where I take a look at his physique and he claims natural, And I struggle to believe that, right? Like that's there's a bit of a there's a difference between uh it's always funny because like you'll see somebody who has like a really good physique, you're like, oh, they have a great physique. And then you'll see somebody else and you're like, that is unreal. Kai falls into the unreal category where I'm just like, natural. That's tough to believe. Especially because he's so young. I'm like, if you are natural with this physique, what would you look like in 10 years if you stayed natural and consistent? I'm like, that's just, and he's a really really nice guy. I get along with him. I get along with him fine. Like I've never had any personal issue with him. Seems like a really really genuine dude. But you just take a look at a guy like him and you're like, oh, like the potential there is insane. Uh, what about Trell Bank? He's another guy who. So I think people misinterpret Trell a little bit. Um, Trell is big. Trell is not, and this is not like he's obviously huge, right? For a natural lifter, he's obviously huge, but people think Trell is a little bit bigger than he is. Um, the only reason I say that is because like he's sent me his physique updates, everything else, and I've taken a look into his stuff, and he's incredibly strong, but his actual physique is not as big as people think. It's big, but he's still gonna step on stage in like I would guess that if he got fully peeled, he probably would be only a little bit over 200 stage weight. Like we're not dealing with a 250-pound shredded physique or anything like that. And he's got a large frame too, right? Like a large frame can obviously pack on a little bit more weight. He's not a person with a small frame and somehow small frame with 200 pounds of lean mass, right? Which is obviously a different story. So I'm never gonna say like a person has to be natural, but I could believe it. So you think he would fare better in powerlifting? Yes. I think Trell would do better in powerlifting than bodybuilding. He's stupidly strong. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that because I don't know what his leg lifts are like. I haven't seen those actually. I've seen his upper body lifts and they're insane. What do you think about push pull leg, but biceps on push and triceps on pull? It's okay. The only issue you run into with that is sometimes you will have a hard time recovering your arms because often people are doing compound movements on their back and chest day. So when you do compound movements on your back and chest day, which involve the biceps and the triceps heavily, then you're trying to hit your biceps and your triceps on pretty much the next day, and then you're repeating that split. Oftentimes, it can lead to having a bit of a tough time recovering the biceps and triceps. So if you're smart about managing your volume, you can do it, and your overall intensity, exercise selection, etc. But it can be tough from that perspective. Guys, I've already told you if you spam questions, I'm probably not going to answer it. How solid is the research behind BPC 157 and TB 500? I mean, there's, I think, pretty good research behind it, but mostly, I think it's mostly rodents and then like some human trials. Overall, I think we have enough evidence to show that it works pretty well, but I'm not going to sit here and say that you, with 100% certainty, will cure yourself of all your ailments if you take them. What are the differences for being strong versus being very muscular? So there's a few differences, right? Some people are just more efficient at performing movements. So let's put it this way, right? When you start doing bench press for the first time in your life, you will often see your bench press go up 50 pounds in the course of like 3 or 4 weeks. Now, does that mean that you put on as much muscle as you would expect in order to get 50 pounds additional on your bench press? Probably not. but you're getting very, very neurologically efficient at the movement. So some people are more neurologically efficient than others at performing movements. Sometimes people have better leverages for certain things. Overall, there is a lot of crossover between strength and size, and that's why weight categories exist, right? If there wasn't a very large crossover between size and strength, you wouldn't have weight categories in powerlifting. They recognized that there is such a big crossover that they're like, yeah, we shouldn't have people who are 200 pounds competing against guys who are 250. So when people try to separate them out fully, I'm like, that's dumb. Powerlifting doesn't even separate them out fully. The powerlifting federations doesn't separate them out fully because they understand it. So if you don't, I don't know what to tell you. But yeah, there's a lot of crossover. But ultimately, strength is about performing movements in general. Rather, hypertrophy is about getting specific tension into target muscle groups. Will the just pick any curl variation and get stronger and that still work if you get more advanced? Um, in a sense, yes, right? So let's put it this way. If you did just barbell bicep curls for the rest of your life, you didn't have any other curl variants, I would guess that if you just did that, that you would probably get the majority of the bicep gains that you are going to get in your lifetime. If you legitimately worked on it hard, progressed it, did everything you need to. Now, does that mean that you're going to get your absolute best biceps, the best biceps that you could possibly get? No. And that's where a little bit of variation, a little bit more specificity, I think can help. But you will get very big biceps if you progress your barbell bicep curl to be as good as it can possibly get to in the future. Is there a chance you guys will re-up on the Optimal pre-workout? We're out of stock. I didn't even know we were out of stock, so that's kind of cool. I don't know. I'd have to ask. I'm guessing yes. Obviously my pre-workouts sell pretty well, so I would guess that they'll probably restock. Why science-based lifters don't focus and argue about nutrition? Because nutrition is simple. Nutrition's not that complicated. I mean, I shouldn't say that. You'd have to work pretty hard to make nutrition super complicated. Now, I'm not saying there aren't some nuances, but typically most lifters understand those nuances enough to already have them in place. I've seen people argue that nutrition makes a bigger difference than lifting when it comes to muscle growth. I'm like, that's quite literally impossible. It's quite literally impossible because if you don't lift in a specific format, you literally will not grow. Where if you like eating, it's like if you just eat what your body requires in order to stick around, even if you didn't focus on your protein, even if you didn't focus on your carbs, even if you didn't focus on your fat, but you progressed your lifts, you worked to progress your lifts over time, you would still grow, right? But that's not the same as cannot be said inversely. Now, I'm not saying that nutrition is not important. I think it is. I'm pretty specific about my nutrition. I make sure to get a variety of foods. I make sure to manage my macros. I'm pretty good about getting my electrolytes in. But what happens is people find nutrition conversations a lot more boring. So people are going to talk about it a lot less. But that's part of the reason why bulking versus cutting became so popular for a little while, because that's technically a nutrition conversation, right? Bulking versus cutting versus main gaining, whatever else. So technically speaking, it has made its way into the hypertrophy sphere. It's just only certain topics get talked about. Or I should say only certain topics get talked about to a significant extent on a consistent basis. Have you ever seen a lateral raise start from overhead? I mean, it's not at that point. I'd have to understand what you're saying. Do you mean like where you internally rotate and pull in like this? Because if you're referring to this motion, then yes. If you're referring to a different motion, I'd need to know what you're talking about. When's the ebook with Keenan coming out? I'm not the person that Keenan's collabing with. I saw people saying that. It's not me. So I don't know who he's collabing with for that thing. I think Keenan and I disagree on enough things when it comes to training that I highly doubt that we'd be able to make a book together. Yes, a downwardly rotating lateral raise from a side pullover. Bro, I can't follow the train of thought. A downwardly rotating lateral raise from a side pullover position. All right. Is this what you mean? Just say yes or no. Is this what you mean? Because if that's what you're referring to, then yes. I've seen that before. That was okay. Yeah, that's a pretty popular exercise among the maximalists. Well, it was for a little while. Then they started doing something else where they would put the arm behind the body and just do a little bit shorter position. Because what they were doing essentially was when they were doing this motion, is they were trying to hit the front delt. So they were pulling like this against the cable machine. And then what they did was they were like, oh, well, the front delt has good leverage below a certain level of humeral elevation. So they started doing this little shorter range of motion where I guess you can't really see that on your end, where it's like pulling from here to here. Keenan does both. Well, there you go. Keenan does both. The maximalist king has spoken. I shouldn't say spoken, but it's been confirmed. That's not a loo raise. A loo raise is where you start at the side and then you come all the way up to the top and then you change the overall path, right? So the loo raise is going to start off as primarily side delt as you raise out to the side. And then as you turn over, as you run out of room, what's going to happen is your arm's going to automatically have to rotate, turn over, and then it would become, and then you'd be pulling in like this. So no, that's not a loo raise. The loo raise takes the full arced path. If you start overhead, it becomes a descending resistance profile, unlike an upwardly rotating lateral. I'd have to see what, I guess I'd have to see where the position of the cable is that you're referring to, or if you're, I guess you might also be talking about a dumbbell. I don't know. If you're talking about a dumbbell, then obviously, like, as it comes down, it would be a descending resistance profile. If you're talking about a cable, then you can make the resistance profile whatever you want it to be. TNF, get a different shirt. What, you don't like the floating head? You don't like the Vanta black? Do you enjoy motor unit recruitment? Of course I enjoy motor unit recruitment. Do you not enjoy motor unit recruitment? Yes, I am the void. How to understand science training from the start by myself. So your best route to get yourself a little bit to get let's say to dip your toes into the water is just to start following various creators who talk about these things and start trying to figure out where they're pulling these concepts from. Sometimes they'll be using citations. Other times you might have to do a little bit of digging. But once you start to figure out where these various creators are taking their stuff from, you can start to get acquainted with how to read literature, interpret literature. That obviously is a topic in and of itself. But the nice thing is, with the age of the internet, you can pretty much become an expert on anything if you're willing to take the time. I'm not saying that everybody has the faculties to be able to understand the depth to a lot of things, but you can become, I shouldn't say an expert, but you can become a lot better than the majority if you're willing to simply put in the time and you have a genuine fascination with it. Who are some other people besides Chris Beardsley to get info from? It all depends on how much of a Teams guy you are. So there's unfortunately, you missed 2 donos. I did? Sorry, I haven't kept my eyes on the screen the entire time. Oh, what to focus in on with wider clavicles slash shorter arms? Well, I mean, ultimately, you still just want to grow in general, but I'm assuming you're referring to the fact that you struggle with a V taper. Your side delts and your lats are going to be the thing that will help overall most with that appearance. All right. Uh, can I get a one-time physique consult? How much? Same price as my typical consult. I don't make specialization for uh, very, very specific hyper niche things. Really enjoying this live. Thanks, Unc. You are welcome. Uh, how much you make a year? 800K, 1 mil? You are just nosy. Nosy, nosy. Does nucleus overloading make any sense? I don't think so. I don't think so. As I've as as I have gone further into my career, more and more I have been more comfortable with saying I don't think so. Um, if you'd asked me that like 4 years ago, I'd have been like, "You're an idiot." No, right? Like you're just always every time you get a little bit further into things, you're like, you know what? Maybe at some point it will be proven, but it doesn't appear to be that way. Do you think people cannot be like 10 to 12% body fat because they are too much food focused, or is it just by prolonged deficit and that focus will go away? No, there are some people that will really, really struggle to stay at 10 to 12% um, their entire life if they try to do it. Now, I'm not saying there can't be methods to make it easier, but like I struggle to stay at 10% body fat, right? Like I have to be pretty darn specific to stay at 10. When I say struggle, I don't mean like I can't do it. I just mean it's not comfortable, right? It's like I don't settle out comfortably at 10% body fat. My comfort is going to be higher. But that doesn't mean I can't do it. I just have to accept that I'm going to be thinking about food more. Uh, cuff straps to Europe ever? Maybe. I guess we'll see. Who provides great knowledge on powerlifting? So I'm not even gonna lie. I try not to. I try not to say that certain people are going to be really good at things unless I have really thoroughly vetted them. So it's very, very tough for me to say, oh yeah, go follow X person for powerlifting. They really know what they're doing, right? Because I just don't spend much time in that area. So I wish I could give you a better answer, but unfortunately, I would just be giving you whispers about maybe because like they seem to have done relatively well with some of their clients, but I just don't really follow it all that closely. I like your fat loss guide, Unc. I'm on a beautiful cut right now, paired with Retatrutide. Bro, my fat loss manual paired with Retatrutide, bro is flying through this cut. My goodness. My grandpa's trying to build muscle after surgery. How differently would you approach training for that? As long as he's like basically you just want to start slow, right? It's like a lot of times people want to they want to assume that everybody's circumstance is so incredibly unique that they need a completely different approach. But basically, all you want to do with somebody like your grandpa who's recovering after surgery is you want to break them in slowly to movements, making sure that they're not pushing things too hard in the beginning so they can actually get acquainted with those movements. But after that point, have them progress, like have them work to progress their number, their and like the intensity is obviously something that they can dial in over time. Like you want to be careful, like older people, a little bit more frail, but eventually he should be able to push his exercises same way you do. But slow. Slow ramp up. You should put some background music, maybe. Uh Above what percent body fat would you say is unhealthy? So it's more so rather than saying it as a body fat percent, it's actually not really about body fat percent. Uh, It's partially about body fat percent because obviously body fat can be an independent risk variable, but it's also a tandem argument, right? So, how's your cardio? Are you actually taking in building muscle? Are you eating things that are good for your overall health? Right. So it's like, I think a lot of times what happens is people want there to be like, oh, this body fat means you're unhealthy. This body fat means you're healthy. It doesn't really work like that. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say that if you're 40% body fat, it's probably a very good chance you're not in great health, right? Or at least not in nearly as good of health as what you could be. But I'm also not going to be like, okay, well, you're 15% body fat. You must be healthy. It doesn't really work like that. Is that your logo behind? That's yes. That was my first optimal pre-workout. Uh, from where did you learn the stuff you know? So for me, it's always been, I'm going to learn something best by becoming obsessive about particular topics. Um, I've always had a personality where I fixate on things. So growing up, there was a bunch of different things that I would just fixate on as I was, I don't know, like there would be certain things where I would just fixate for a while. And hypertrophy has been my biggest fixation for the last while. But when I was growing up, it was a bunch of random topics. So, like, I was really, really good at geography for absolutely no reason when I was younger. I was obsessed with like flags and countries that nobody else had heard of, and learning factoids about mammals, not animals, mammals. Um, then it was, then I got really into like, I would get really into like individual like sports. So I was really into ping pong for a little while. That was one where I could play. I would not stop playing ping pong. Then I got really into. Then I got really I was really into cup stacking for a little bit. Got pretty darn good at it too. So that was fun. Uh, so it was like I always had these kind of things that I would get kind of fixated on. And then like and throughout this whole process, sports were just kind of a mainstay. So I was pretty fixated on those two. Obviously, soccer was a hyper fixation for me, but that was more so practical than it was I didn't love soccer as much as I loved a lot of these other things. When I say love, I guess love's not the right word. I wasn't as obsessive, but I still did it every single day because I just knew I had to. Um, Long story short, when you're asking like how did I learn about hypertrophy, it was just something I became pretty obsessive about because I wanted to know as much as I could. And so I would listen to creators talk about various things, and then I would go look into it myself. Then I'd listen to them talk about things, then I go look into it myself. And then I started doing self study, and then I started like it was just kind of one of those things where I was like, oh dang, like this rabbit hole goes deep, and so I just kept learning more and more. And now I've gotten to the point where uh, I would say I'm less fixated on hypertrophy now than I was in the early stages. Let's put it that way. I've gotten to the point where I'm like, all right, all roads lead back to a few fundamental concepts that do not change. And once you figure that out, you'll find for the majority of you guys, most of you will not be nearly as interested in some of these things that you're hyper focused on right now in like 10 years. You'll find that it will like start to fade. You'll be like, oh, well, that was a fun time. That was interesting. You'll probably still incorporate some of the concepts that you're learning right now, but you won't have the same level of enthusiasm about it. Da, 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 da. Any tips on self-studying? I always struggle about finding information. So one of the best things that you can do when self-studying, and this is where a lot of people mess up. So when you're self-studying, what most people do is they go try to find things that prove them right. That's the worst way to do it. What you should do, and this is part of the reason why you guys have not seen me weigh in on certain topics to a significant extent, because of the fact that I don't feel fully confident that what I would lean towards is the right answer. And I don't like to put out bad information. Pretty I'm pretty firm on that, to be completely honest. I know some people are just like, oh, well, if it's bad, it's bad. Then I prefer not to like muddy the waters if possible. So that's why you haven't seen me weigh in on various debates that other influencers are going on to the same extent. Or if I do weigh in on it, I'll give both sides and be like, you can come to the conclusion you want. Uh, but overall, what I think is far too often you're seeing people who think they enjoy studying when really they just enjoy being a know-it-all. And this is a know-it-all strong. They enjoy being right. And so what they do is they will go look for things in order to prove that they're right on a certain topic rather than saying, okay, could I be wrong? Can I prove myself wrong? And if I'm not sure, should I be putting this out here as gospel? Da, da, da. Whew. Sorry, that was a long explanation. How much cardio do you do daily? Not enough. Not enough. Thoughts on replacing squats with Bulgarian split squats? Doesn't seem smart to me. I'm gonna be completely honest. I've never understood the hype. I've never understood the hype about Bulgarian split squats, even from the beginning. Because I know it was one of those things where lots of science-based creators really liked Bulgarian split squats. Even from the very, very beginning, I looked at it and I thought, wait, that joint is moving, that joint is moving. You're on one foot. So you're having to like kind of stabilize a little bit with that back leg over here. And like, isn't that the same joint action that this is doing over here, but much more stable over here than it is? And it never made sense to me. I was like, what are you guys like? That's why you've never seen me do Bulgarian split squats. You can look, you can scour the internet. You won't find a video of me doing Bulgarian split squats. Never did them. I didn't understand it. It never made sense to me. But if you like them, go ahead. Da, da, da. How long would it take to get from around 25% body fat to 6 to 7% body fat at a reasonable pace? The fact that you asked it that way suggests to me that you've never done it before. At which point I would say you shouldn't be losing, like, if you think that you're going to lose more than 1% body fat per week, you're probably a little bit delusional. So I would say take the percentage points and then add weeks onto it. So 25 to 6%, obviously 19. That's 18 to 19 weeks if you lost 1% body fat every single week, which I highly doubt you'll be able to do. So I would say probably you're looking at, if you were to do it in a way that is reasonable, if you were able to, 25 to 30 weeks. And that would be like pretty fast. But that's obviously assuming a lot of things about you that I couldn't know. Can I get an objective definition for whether a food is healthy or not healthy? Let me see. Let me see. Can I get an objective definition as to whether a food is healthy or not healthy? No, I can't. Like, I can tell you which foods are more nutritious than others, but not healthy versus healthy, uh, there's enough varying circumstances where it would be very hard to draw the exact line between not healthy and healthy. Now, I'm not saying you can't point at certain foods and be like, yeah, it's not healthy, right? Like, there's some foods that you could point at and be like, oh, that's probably not healthy in the grand scheme of things. So, Skittles, right? Skittles, sugar and food dye. That's what you got. I'm not going to sit here and be like, yeah, Skittles are very healthy for you or healthy for you. But I'm also not going to sit here and say, hey, if you're going low on carbs when you're doing some sort of endurance exercise, having no Skittles is better than having Skittles. You know? Does losing body fat percentage get harder and harder, or is it just linear? It gets harder. If it didn't get harder to lose body fat, with passing percentage points, then you would see a ton of people walking around at 5% body fat. The reason you don't see people walking around at 5% body fat often is because every percent body fat that you lose becomes more difficult than the last. What's your opinion on the new trend that the incline bench doesn't bias the upper chest? I mean, that would be false. Now, I don't think you're referring to what you think you're referring to. It's not that the incline bench doesn't bias the upper chest. It's that if you perform incline bench in a way where you're no longer doing an incline bench and you have your elbows flared out, then you're turning what was an incline bench into a flat bench. Right? I think that's more of the argument that you're referring to, which is true. What do you use your Aura ring for? I don't have an Aura ring. Is it possible to maintain 7 to 8% body fat as a natural? It's possible. I wouldn't suggest the majority of people do it, but it's possible. I've done it. It's like, yeah, could I do it? Sure. Did it suck? Yeah. So, what's the lowest body fat percent you managed to get to? Um, so that's one where it's like, uh, I can't give you like a for sure answer because there was a time period where I legitimately think that I got leaner. Uh, I legitimately think I got leaner when I was just messing around trying to get lean than I did when I stepped on stage. Just because I take a look at some of the pictures of certain body parts and they were definitely more shredded than they were going into my bodybuilding show. But I never like did full physique updates when I looked like that. And I would say that my last show I was probably just under 6, right? Like I wouldn't have been under 5. But I was just under 6. If I'd given myself a little bit more time, then sure I could have gotten there. But just from a timing standpoint, different things that were going on. My wife always wants me to compete before Thanksgiving. So, but yeah. How can you tell body fat percentage if in bodies are unreliable? You'll never be able to tell it perfectly. Uh, your best bet is typically one of the best ways that a lot of people don't talk about is yes, the eyeball test is great, but obviously there's a lot of subjectivity to that. But one of your best ways is to actually get shredded, because when you actually get shredded, it gives you a better idea to look backwards and then look forwards as you like go into leanness and out of leanness, because it becomes significantly easier to tell body fat as you get leaner. So it's much, much easier to ballpark a body fat percentage when somebody is in the like 8 to 10% range versus when somebody's in the 33% range, right? When somebody's in the 33% range and you start guessing, it's like your your plus or minus could be like 5. But when you get to like 8% body fat, you're not having a plus or minus of 5 if you know what you're doing. Like nobody's going to guess that you're 3% body fat who has any idea what they're looking at when you're 8%. And nobody's going to guess that you're 13% body fat who has any idea what they're looking at when you're 8. But if you're 33, there's a possibility that you could be off to like up to 38 or like down to 28. So the best, like one of the best ways to figure out body fat percentages is to actually see throughout the course of prep, you're down, you're up, and you can get a much better idea as to how things work. Now, I think one thing that people don't take into account a lot is body water, because obviously once you because like I'll see people all the time, they're like, oh well, I'll tell them how much weight they have to lose to get down, and they're like, So you're saying I'm 25% body fat? Like, no, I'm not saying you're 25% body fat. What I'm saying is you're 20% body fat and you're holding like 10 pounds of water, right? So like there's a big difference between like somebody having to lose 40 pounds for prep and somebody having to lose 50 pounds for prep. And that is literally just the amount of water that they will lose alongside of the 40 pounds of fat that they've lost. So I feel like I kind of segued off of what we were talking about, but uh don't answer it, TNF. Thanks for warning me. Also, why do you have a Captain Marvel profile? Boo. Boo. How you guys like an Ironheart? I haven't seen it yet. I've just seen a few clips, and those clips made me not want to watch it. Wait, what happened? Why'd the chat stop moving? Why'd the chat stop moving? Oh, weird. Stop moving for me. Sorry. Is it possible to outtrain a poor diet? Depends on how poor the diet and how good the training is. Like I've never understood that question. If you're like, it is possible to outtrain a poor diet, and it's some kid eating 3,000 calories and doing a decent amount of cardio. I'm like, wow, you shocked me. Who would have known that you could eat Lucky Charms and chocolate bars for 3,000 calories and not put on fat while playing soccer every day? Whoa, big surprise. Unk doesn't know what lag is. No, I know what lag is. I just didn't know why it stopped. Can we all agree that wide grip shoulder press, oh, 1 second, are a worse side delt stimulus than a closer grip shoulder press? Well, I don't do shoulder press for side delts, so it doesn't matter. That was me. That started the whole ebook thing with Keenan from the clip. My bad. I seriously thought it was you. Sorry, man. It's not me. It's not me. How to do aggressive mini cut to prevent muscle loss. So I actually did a quick, easy, aggressive mini cut guide on my YouTube. If you type it up, it'll come up right away. It's like a 3-minute video and it explains things. But aggressive mini cuts are not for everybody, right? And obviously it doesn't deal with every single possibility, but it gives you a pretty quick, easy guide. But I also don't think that most people should be aggressively cutting. I think definitely there are some people that can do it, but if you're not familiar with dieting in general, then it's like, why are you trying to run before you can walk? Like if you're not familiar with dieting in general and then you're trying to go aggressive, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Please name an influencer you look forward to collab with. Will Tennyson. Will Tennyson is my number one. If I could collab with anybody, it would be him. I should say, there's some pretty big bodybuilders I'd like to collab with too. Probably Will Tennyson and C-Bum. I think those are my main ones. Can you personally function in day-to-day life at 6%? Not optimally. So when I'm 6% body fat, I find myself cutting corners, both literally and physically, both literally and figuratively. So when I'm 6% body fat, I don't have as much motivation to do the majority of things. So I'll find myself being less productive in work. I'll find myself being less productive in the gym. Um, so it's like when you say, can you personally function? It all depends on what level of function you're referring to. Of course, I can function, I can live, I can do some daily tasks, but it's not going to be to the same level as when I have higher body fat. Collab with the great coach Kasim. I feel like they've somebody's been pushing me to get with Cass for a while now. Um, I know some people wouldn't like to see me with Cass, but I have no enemies. I have no enemies. I think far too often it's like, oh well, you can't do content with this person because they believe this and they believe this, and I'm just like I don't know if there's anybody. I don't know if there's any influencer that I can think of that I would not be very comfortable with just with collabing with. Maxi Seda, that'd be a fun one. Thorfinn reference. Why do you need a sword, Thorfinn? A sword is for killing. Who do you intend to kill? Trend Twins tried to do that. I tried to do that at a what's it called? What's it called? The Arnold. They said yes, and then they backed out on me at the last second. They're like, "Oh, sorry, somebody else wanted to." I'm like, "Dang it! I'm still getting pushed off to the side. I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet where people on that level are like, oh yeah, this is a collab I can't miss. So I got to get better, guys. I got to get better. Chris likes you though. Who the heck is Chris? Oh, you mean Sebum? What are you talking about? Ignoring Dono? How am I missing these? Where is it? Oh, no reason for failure if you perfectly know your RIR. Um, you could probably make a good argument for that. I personally like training to failure. I don't know. I'm still like, okay, let's put it this way. Uh there are some times where I will be able to look at all of the available evidence on a topic and I'll be like, okay, what does the totality of evidence say? And am I going to just do everything in accordance with X particular takeaway? I love training to failure. I'm sorry, I do. And I don't see enough evidence in the literature to show it being inferior that I will probably stop training to failure. Now, obviously, I still leave RIR from time to time, but the idea of never training to failure, I can't do it. I can't do it. And I've got such good results from training to failure. It's very hard to throw it away. But if you want to train with one RIR for every set for the rest of your life, have at her. Like I'm definitely not going to say you're stupid for it. What are your actual thoughts on full body every other day and one set? Um, my actual thoughts, I'm not a big fan, to be completely honest. Now, does that mean that I don't think that people can make great results with it? Absolutely. For myself, though, I don't see it. I don't see it. Um, I typically find that when I hit a muscle group, I have a very hard time performing with high quality on that same muscle group within 48 hours. I'm not saying it's not possible, but I've found that I more consistently have a hard time recovering after 48 hours than I recover after 48 hours. So that could just be an adaptation or like a particular training style that I need to adjust. But I've never been a big fan of that. And also, that would mean that I would have to take a rest day every other day. And I hate rest days. Rest day is the worst day of the week. So I can't see myself taking 3.5 rest days. Do you agree with increasing sets as you get more experienced? I assume no, but been on 12 sets a week for a year now. Thank you for reading, Unc. No problem as far as reading. Honestly, um, to be completely honest, uh, this is a tough one because this is another one of those ones where you'll have various schools of thought. Personally, I have found that as I've gotten more advanced, I would be more likely to decrease sets than increase. Um, I'm able to output more, able to do more overall damage to myself by doing more. Uh, and I find that I do very well with keeping the volume slightly lower. Now, I'm not saying that I'm doing like one set three times a week, right? Like that's not I'm not doing the ultra low volume like that. But I do find that doing slightly lower volume works pretty well for me, and I have not seen a need to increase it a whole lot. Uh, Play around with it, see what you like. I think sometimes people get so obsessive about what currently other people are doing that they won't try things for themselves. You have an entire training career ahead of you. You have an entire training career ahead of you. Play around with various methods. Obviously, give that method time to sink in so that you can actually see if you're doing well with it. Because I think people will try something for like 2 weeks and they're like, "Oh, it wasn't working for me," and then they'll try something else for 2 weeks. I'm like, give it some time to marinate, see how it feels for you. But personally, it's very, very rare that you'll see me go above 10 sets for an individual muscle group in a week, in a training week. Doesn't mean that it's never happened or that it will never happen, but it's definitely more rare than common. Are muscle imbalances genetic? It can be. Yeah, it definitely can be. How much do you rest between warm up sets and your working set? If you have to ask, then your warm up set wasn't a warm up set. Good way to know. Because if you have to ask, then you were clearly going too hard on your warm up sets. So you shouldn't have to think about it all that much. What's the best split or exercise order for arms if they are a weaker point? I mean, split wise, you can do whatever you want. All that matters is that you're putting your arms first, right? So I shouldn't say all that matters, but like I would guess that you have the fundamentals of hypertrophy already in your mind. But like what you're generally referring to when you try to say like the split, it's like it doesn't really matter as long as your arms are coming first in the workout. Now, have good split principles in general, but I'm not going to tell you you have to do X specific split. Keenan says full body every other day is objectively the best split. It is objectively the best split if you ascribe to the proper tenets. So let's imagine this, right? Let's say you have 3 pillars of hypertrophy, right? You have, would you surrender your natty card for $1 million? No, because I can make $1 million while being natty. All right. So let's say you have 3 pillars. This is just pretend, right? 3 pillars when it comes to hypertrophy. You have frequency, you have atrophy, and you have, let's just say overall recovery, right? Because like they're not the same thing, right? Atrophy and recovery are not the same thing. I know a lot of times people equate them, but they're not. So frequency of hitting the muscle group, atrophy, recovery. If you fundamentally agree that on very, very specific principles that all line up with these, then you will automatically come to the conclusion that full body every other day is the best split objectively. But if you start to say, well, I don't necessarily agree fully with all of the tenets of X variable, then it starts to cave in. And I don't think people think nuanced enough to understand what I'm referring to here, which is essentially, okay, so you've collected a bunch of studies from X location. You've thrown out other ones because they don't agree with your mechanisms, whether they're right or not. You think, okay, well, the mechanism matters more, so therefore I'm not going to incorporate this into my overall thinking. You kind of get to a self-fulfilling prophecy because you've said that this study doesn't matter. This study doesn't matter. Oh, but this one does because it agrees with X mechanism. Therefore, I'm going to incorporate this one into my overall thing. I'm going to incorporate this one into my overall thing. I'm going to ignore some of these. These ones don't really line up with the mechanisms that we've been talking about. So those ones, I'm going to leave them out. And then what happens is you kind of build full body every other day to be the best split rather than taking a look at every single piece of data and being like, the data says full body every other day is the best. Now, I'm not even saying this is wrong to do, right? Like everybody has a framework that they work from. Everybody is going to have certain biases, but my overall biases do not lend me to believing that full body every other day is objectively the best split. I'm not saying I'm not even saying it's a bad split, but I'm also not lending, it's also my overall biases relative to the literature are not lending me to be able to objectively say that there is a best split. And I would guess that if you were to take and you were to study somebody doing full body every other day, give a few different other types of splits, well programmed, smartly managed, and you were to track over the course of a year, 2 years, I doubt you would see the full body every other day smack around the other splits the way that proponents think it would. That answer was so tough. What answer? Is it true training obliques makes your shape worse? It would depend on how the obliques came in. So I think far too often you have people trying to give a very specific answer to individual scenarios. So say, oh, well, we were just talking about Keenan. Keenan's a good example here. Keenan does not have a super wide waist, at least from what I've seen. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think he has a super wide waist. So Keenan training obliques might actually add to his overall look because you get a little bit more muscle in that area, a little bit more thickening, but overall the thickening doesn't outpace the extra look that you get from having the slightly wider waist. But take a guy like Nick Walker. I think Nick Walker would be a moron to train obliques, right? He doesn't want those puppies any bigger because if those puppies get bigger, then he's just going to become a more blocky version of himself. So I think it more depends on the overall waist structure of the individual than it does a yes or no answer. The $1 million one. Oh, well, that's just true. Now, if you'd said $1 billion, then, I mean, you offer me $1 billion, I might have to lose my natural status. I'm not gonna lie. Classic Olympia prediction. I'd have to see. I'd have to see a full list of competitors because there's been some good guys who have come in recently. So I would need to see the full list of competitors and go analyze them. Some of the standouts that I can think of right now, though, are Terrence Ruffin, Dino, Urs, Sommerfeld. Obviously, Sommerfeld being the favorite to win right now. You have some newer guys too. I can't remember some of their names, unfortunately. Michael DeBoule always does solid. I think people often don't talk about him. I don't know why. His name doesn't really get brought up, but he's been in like the top, I think 6 to 7 for the Olympia, like every single year for the past while. You've got guys like Nas. Nas is looking really good. I'd have to see more people though. Who are some content creators for getting good information from besides you, King? Again, I really struggle to sign off on creators because I feel like the minute I feel like I sign off on a person as a whole, then people are going to follow what that person says without question. And so I struggle with that because I'm going to disagree with a decent number of takes, as you should, that other people have. So just labeling it as good or bad creators, I think various people excel in different areas. Now, I can tell you people that I've interacted with who I've enjoyed interacting with. So, for example, Alex Leonidas, right? Alex Leonidas, while we might disagree on a few things, I like Alex a lot. And like I've watched his stuff, I've enjoyed his stuff. I especially from a mentality standpoint, like I like his drive, I like his ability to push hard and like his laser focus on like what he's trying to accomplish. I love it. But like we might obviously disagree on some of the more fundamental aspects. On the flip side, you'll have guys like Yo Talks, who I would say is the opposite, right? Like Yo's mentality, I think, uh is often off in the way he views training because I think sometimes he tries so hard to be on the cutting edge that I think sometimes he misses overall points that he could be having. Um, and I'm not gonna, and neither are bad, right? Neither are bad. What you have is you have uh, it's different stages of life, different thought processes, and you can take a look and you can gain something valuable from both. And I think that you should be somebody who, rather than saying, okay, well, X person is good creator, watch a variety of people and then you can come to conclusions as to who you tend to agree with more often than not, but never treat somebody as infallible. Fair enough. Just trying to get some general examples so I have a direction of where to go for more perspectives and then form my own. So there's the people that they refer to as the noble natties, who are a little bit more like grunge, push hard, don't worry too much about complicating training. Then you have a bunch of people on TikTok who are on the science-based wave where it's like trying to get every single little detail like fully maximized. You have guys like Keenan, Yotox, Jackson Hooper, uh, Scientific Snitch, Paul Carter. Although I guess Paul Carter kind of wouldn't be quite in the same vein as a few of these other people. Um, Elijah Mundy. Again, like you definitely can't put them in the exact same vein. But then you have other people on the other side who you can also listen to and you can garner stuff from. You have like Greg Knuckles, you have Menno Henselmans, you have Dr. Mike Israetel, you have Jeff Nippard, you have so there's a crap ton of people you can take a look at. I like people like you or Declan mostly since y'all are kind of in between. Yeah, it's I'm not a tribalistic person. So that's why you'll often find Coach Cassim disseminated all of Yo's flaws and it went out the other ear. He does not listen to anyone but Chris. I mean, everybody has their blind spots. Um, so yeah, Coach Cassim, N1 Education. He's another guy you can go take a look into. Uh, but obviously, like Cass disagrees with a lot of things that he disagrees with a lot of things that Beardsley says. So, I mean, 'cause I guess Beardsley is probably the most direct link that I could give you for a lot of viewpoints within the science-based community, because a lot of people look up to Chris Beardsley, a lot of people look up to Cass, and then there's a lot of people taking what they like from. I mean, a lot of people honestly just go like, "Oh, well, everything Chris says is gospel, everything Cass says is gospel," and then what you can do is you can actually take and branch off into both areas, and then come to some conclusions on your own. Uh, I get very frustrated. I get very frustrated with the fact that people cannot acknowledge when somebody makes a good point just because they don't like uh, the overall stances of that individual. Always has bothered me. Why'd you stop playing soccer? Just ended that portion of my life. There was like stuff where, to make a very long story short, if I was to continue playing soccer, I would not have been somebody who coming out of the end of my soccer career would have been able to step into a top level pro team, right? Like if I was going to do it, it would have had to be like grind, working from the lower tiers, and trying to like eventually get to that upper level, right? Which I weighed my options. I took a look at where I was at in life, young, married, would have to like obviously spend a lot of time away from my wife in order to do so. She was still in school, and I just said, you know what, I'm okay with soccer being done. Cuff straps, but with figure eight strap, good concept. It probably wouldn't work because you need to have a cuff in order for the ring to attach to, because you need something solid, right? The figure eight strap wouldn't have the solid wrist portion in order for you to attach the cuff to. You should collab with Declan. That'd be fun. Does the long head work in dips? Maybe. I mean, I know people have argued that. I don't think, if I had to put my best guess on it, I would not guess that the long head is contributing as significantly as other portions of the physique, right? I think your front delts are going to come in a lot. I think your chest is going to come in a lot. Serratus, you're going to have a good amount of lateral and medial head involvement. And I think the long head might be relegated to more of a stabilization role than a direct large output. You said 9 months ago to not even think about cutting before 207 pounds at 6'1". So when I like gave you guys those numbers, those were numbers based on if you think that you're going to be and want to be a top level bodybuilder, right? So if you're 207 pounds at 6'1" and you're carrying a lot of body fat, cut, right? Like get rid of the body fat. What I'm referring to is you're somebody who's looking to be a high level bodybuilding competitor. If you're 207 pounds at 6'1", and which would obviously, like, we're talking about cutting, so you'd be like, I don't know, 15 to 20% body fat. Then if you would have been below that at 15-20% body fat at 6'1", there's probably not a great chance that you're going to step onto a bodybuilding stage being like a top level seasoned guy, unless maybe you had disproportionately small legs and the majority of your mass was in the upper. So like there's always caveats to things, but it was overall taking a look at bodybuilding. Like, are you going to be somebody who steps on stage and is like, oh my gosh, like that guy's huge? That was more of the context of that. Dang, I feel like my voice is gonna go. Whew. We've been here for a long time. Makes sense. Thanks for answering. No problem. Are you in a point in your journey where you prefer to not do more than one press in a session or more than one set for a lower compound? So I don't really think of it like that. When I'm doing my training, I don't think of it as, oh, I have one compound that I'm going to do in a workout. What I actually do is I say, okay, what muscle groups am I trying to work to their fullest extent? What's the primary focuses in this workout? I work those first. And then what I do is everything else after that is much more fluid. So if I go into a workout, let's say I'm doing a back and bicep day. I know you guys, oh, you're not doing upper lower, you're not doing, just chill. If I do like a back and bicep day and rear delt, let's throw rear delt in there. And I go in there and I say, well, I want my lats to grow and I want my traps to grow, right? That's my primary focus. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and find ways to isolate those lats as best as possible. And I'm going to try and find ways to isolate those traps as best as possible. Past that point, it's anybody's game. Could there be a couple compounds in there if I'm feeling it? Sure. Does there have to be? No. So it's really about the overall context rather than it being, oh, you have a set rule that you only do one compound per session. I don't do stuff like that. Longest stream yet. I'm already getting my second meal in. If you could lift every day, what split is your choice? Well, I can lift every day. So I I'm not gonna lie, I really, really enjoy, I know this is blasphemy, I really enjoy a split that has an arms day. I should say Sharms day. Sharms is fun. I'm not even gonna front. Sharms is fun. So if there's a split that allows for that, um, it's very fun to me. But that doesn't mean that I'm like gonna say that it's objectively like the best way to program. It's fun though. It is fun. And if you need a little bit more focus on your shoulders and arms, and you want to have a dedicated shoulders and arms day, have at her, man. Don't let people tell you that you can't do that you can't make your split programming fun. If you wanted to minimize tricep involvement, has the idea of doing lengthened partials on a converging chest press crossed your mind? Actually, yes, it has. So that was something I was doing. That was something I was actually doing for a decent amount of time before I started taking more presses out of the equation. Where because it was something I told people for a very long time, but for some reason, I don't know why this take didn't necessarily go as big, but I told people for a very long time, I was like, look, if you're trying to do a compound movement for your chest and you're so focused on locking out, you're missing the point. Because I would see people, what they would do is they would start doing their presses and they would like, they'd do their press and they'd be moving it pretty easily from here to here. And then you'd see them slow down for like 3 or 4 reps at this. And they'd be like, ugh. And then they'd do their rep and it'd be like, ugh. Dude, I'm like, dude, you're literally doing what's supposed to be for your chest and you're putting a crap ton of energy into your triceps. Like, sure, if your lockout is nice and smooth and it doesn't really make a difference, absolutely. But when things get a little bit more tiring and you're struggling at the end of every rep to do you're struggling at the top portion of every rep and you're trying to hit your chest, what are you doing? Like, think about that a little bit more. So that's why I've been wanting to make a video for a little while. And I was trying to figure out how to go about making it. And I wanted to call it Ronnie Coleman, the ultimate science-based lifter, just to piss some people off. Because there was a lot of things that Ronnie would do in his training, and I watch it, I'm like, it's pretty smart, honestly. Like I know like people are like, oh, he's just slinging weight around. I'm like, dude, like, this guy's like keeping the tension on his chest. He's not locking out his triceps during certain movements. He's only going through certain ranges in order to make things happen. He's working up to top sets and hitting like maybe 1 or 2 sets, and then and for like people lie about his volume all the time. I don't know why, but people are like, oh yeah, well Ronnie was doing like 40 sets for a muscle. I'm like, no, he wasn't. Have you ever actually watched him train? And like I don't so like I've been playing around with that concept for a little bit of time, but we'll see. I don't know how much heat I want to take. What are your thoughts on Ice Swallow? Ice Swallow. Oh, that was a nice that was a that come on, man. Come on. You almost got me. I didn't finish it. You, come on. Come on. Should have said it louder. Am I alive? What do you mean am I alive? Come on. Yes. Yes. How many sets did he do? You'd have to go through and analyze his workouts, but it definitely wasn't 40. Let's put it that way. Or if you were to count it as 40, you'd essentially be just counting his warm-up sets. Lengthened partial presses are line up well with what the bros did for decades. They can't trash half reps when that's what the biggest human. Yeah, I've often found that funny because I'll see people be like, these guys didn't do this, these guys didn't do this, and I'm like, I mean, they might not have said that they did certain things, but they definitely did certain things, right? Like there was definitely RIR happening, especially when people were doing higher volumes. Have you ever watched? I'll see like they'll be like the most high intense workout that people today couldn't imagine doing, and you'll see a guy, and then he'll put the weights down. I'm like, zero slowdown, heavy grunting, sweating. That's what we're referring to as the highest intensity that you've ever seen. All right. But anyways, no, I think there's been a big disconnect where a lot of the guys who are very, very big and who have accomplished a lot in their career did a crap ton of things right. And then people hyperfixate on the smaller details and say, well, they didn't do this. I'm like, well, no, but they did do this. Well, that's just basics. Like, okay, well, they also did this. That's also, it's like, okay, well, they also did that. And you just point more and more things that they actually did really well. And eventually you figure out when you have 20 years of a training career and you get a lot of things right, you're going to get pretty darn big. Could they have done things slightly better and made things happen slightly faster? Of course. But let's say you lose out on 4 years worth of training time because you didn't do things as well as you could have. Let's just say that. All right, 16 versus 20 years. Still going to be huge. Da, da, da. You are such a doll. Thank you. How much steps do you do a day? I don't count my steps when I'm not in prep. So when I'm prepping, I'll count my steps in order to make sure that I'm like not so it's all about like trying to keep as many variables stable as possible. So when I'm in prep, I'll count steps. When I'm not in prep, I don't count steps. I cannot set up my seated leg curl correctly. The calf pad keeps rolling as I'm curling. I've tried to line my knee up with the axis and everything. Could it be the machine isn't good, or keep trying? So if you ever find yourself using a machine that just will not cooperate and you've tried over and over again, it's fighting over it is probably not the best. Now I can't speak to your specific machine. I don't know exactly what it looks like or how it's working. If you can find a seated hamstring curl that works well, then obviously you want to use it. But if there's just enough construction issues with the machine itself that it's not going to work well, then don't force yourself to use it. How is Yo so strong but not big? Yo's not that strong. Come to Oxygen Dubai, best gym in the world. I would love to. Pay for my flight to Dubai and I'll be there in a heartbeat. Or I should say pay for my trip to Dubai and I'll be there. Four weekly sets enough to grow at a good pace. Good is subjective. I think far too often people are looking for the minimum. So for some reason, we're all about we're all about maximizing growth until it comes to volume, and then we're like, is this enough? It's like, what is happening right now? Like, you guys aren't coming to me for what's enough, right? You guys are coming to me for maximal growth. That's typically why you're asking questions. So when you say 4 weekly sets enough to grow at a good pace, I'm like, I just don't really think that the question is a great question, to be completely honest. I'm getting stronger, but not bigger. I'm begging. Well, if you're legitimately getting stronger within a solid rep range, you are getting bigger. You're just impatient. Unless, like, if your idea of getting stronger is just like your technique is changing, and so you're not actually getting stronger, you're just like using more body parts in order to make a movement happen, that's a different story. Most people conflate frontal plane and scapular plane when talking about pull downs. It's true. It's true. I've tried to explain this before to people. Oftentimes they're like, "Oh, I'm in the frontal plane," and they're like leaned back like this, pulling. I'm like, "What do you mean you're in the frontal plane? That ain't no frontal plane." Do you think you'll ever compete in powerlifting? I mean, maybe for fun, for some content or something like that, but not legitimately. Not something where I'd like spend a lot of time prepping for it or anything like that. How would you go about programming to bring up arms if they are a weak point compared to chest and back? Guys, I swear you very much overcomplicate weak point training. If you have a weak point, place it earlier in the workout. I know it sounds ridiculously simple. Place it earlier in the workout. Give it whatever you would typically think of as good when it comes to exercise selection, intensity, frequency, and then progress it over time. Obviously, you can do unilateral movements too if you're like trying to really, really hone in on things, but that is what you do. I do. Okay. You're not patient, or you don't have the genetics for it, or both. That's it. I'm sorry. Like, you can't just. I can't just wake up. If I wish I could. I wish I could wake up and decide that my chest and my lats are going to be the strongest points on my body. I wish I could. I can't. Everybody's going to have limitations, right? So has my chest significantly grown from the time I started training till now? Absolutely. Have my lats? Absolutely. But I can't just sit here and be like, oh, well, I put them first, so why are they not as good as my triceps? Doesn't work like that. Bro, you replying to my comments. Thanks. You are welcome. Are upright rows worth it? I don't really like upright rows. I just think everything that you are doing with an upright row can be better accomplished with another exercise. So that's like a lot of times if you guys ask me about an exercise, if I say no, it's not because of the fact that the exercise is bad. It's more so I will do a quick calculation in my head. Okay, if this exercise is trying to work this muscle group or this muscle group or a combination of muscle groups, are there better, more effective ways to hit that muscle group with other exercises? Yes, then I'm probably going to say no to that exercise. So upright rows, for example, what is an upright row going to do for you that couldn't be better accomplished by another exercise? And I've never seen anybody be able to give a good answer to that question. So lat raises and shrugs separately is better? Yes. Do you have your side delt variations to bias the 3 divisions comprising the side delt? I've never gone that deep, to be completely honest. Yes, I do know that there is that you do have an ability to possibly preferentially go a little bit one way or the other, but there's let's put it this way. I will get pedantic to a certain level. There's certain things that even I have not gotten pedantic to the level of. Not saying that I couldn't in the future, but the side delts is one of them. I've never gotten to that level of pedantism with the side delts. Maybe I will in the future. Who knows? You ever do exercises in the sauna to impress the bros? Always. What else? What else would you do in the sauna? You know what does feel super good though? Uh, so like stretching doesn't feel that great in general, like if you're cold. If you go into a sauna and you start stretching, oh my goodness. Like it's like it is therapeutic, I swear. So every time I go to compete in bodybuilding, I know there's certain poses that I want to hit that are that require a little bit more flexibility than what I'll do on a regular basis. So I'll just go into the sauna for like a month before stepping on stage and just like do a little bit of stretching work. And honestly, I should just do it more often all the time because it's very enjoyable. If my gym has a trash pec fly but it still works, should I rather use cables or the semi-trash machine? If you're calling it a trash machine, you should use the cables. Do you think upper lower with 8 hard sets per week per muscle is going to get someone most of their gains, assuming they react well to the volume? Well, you just said assuming they react well to the volume. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. But do I think upper lower with 8 hard sets per week per muscle can do pretty well? Yes. All right, guys. I have been ignoring my wife all afternoon, so I want to spend some time with her. Not that you guys aren't great and all, but you know, there are some things that are a little bit more important in life. I got to get going, but if you guys need anything from me, code TNF for most things. What do we have? We have a lot of sponsors. So if you just go to my link tree, you can see pretty much everything there. If you guys are struggling to lose fat and keep it off, I have my fat loss manual over there. What else? Oh yeah, my school group. All right. So if you are like looking to get into being a fitness influencer, grow your content, make money off of it, etc. Like I do stuff there. No, it's not some sort of like pay to win thing. Like if you're gonna join it, then please actually like join it with the thought that you're going to have to put in the work and I can just help guide you in the right direction. But I got to get going. So as always, love you guys. Appreciate you guys. TNF out.